Pepper, listen to me. There is no danger. This is not this is. Tony explained to Pepper hurriedly. Even a little incoherent. Is this big boy Tony's new toy? Ha 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 ha. Carl said jokingly to Tony and Pepper, and even looked at Ensign behind him, and they both laughed. Walter. Pepper looked at Carl and Ensign in confusion, not understanding what he was saying, while Tony looked at Carl and the others helplessly, then pulled Pepper away and took off his iron suit. Carl saw that the reactor on Tony's chest seemed to be the same one he had in the cave, and immediately understood why he asked Pepper to do. Thinking of this, he instantly got goosebumps. Let's go, Yingson. Let's go upstairs and have a drink. Tony is still flirting with his little assistant. Carl turned his head and said to Yingson, and he even deliberately said the last sentence loudly in the direction of Tony and Pepper. Yingson shook his head and smiled, just watching Carl making trouble. Carl, after my Iron Man suit is upgraded, I will definitely beat your ass. Tony's voice came from the direction they left. Carl smiled indifferently, and then took Yingson to the living room upstairs, and the two started drinking at the bar. Tony then asked Pepper to replace the reactor for him. After some twists and turns, he successfully replaced the reactor and asked Pepper to get rid of the old one. He said, I have many shortcomings. One of the most obvious is that I like new things and hate old things. Then he handed the old reactor to Pepper and walked to the living room. Pepper looked at Tony's back as he left, and fell into deep thought with the reactor in her hand. After thinking for a while, she put the reactor away. What Tony didn't know was that it was Pepper's action that saved his life in the original timeline. After Tony came to Carl's living room, he happened to see Carl and Ensign drinking at the bar. After all, Tony's house had nothing but alcohol. The food was bought by Pepper, but it was usually hamburgers, pizza and the like. Carl and Ensign could only drink here. Hey Carl, Ensign, there's a charity ball tonight, how about we go together? There will be a lot of hot girls, you can let off some steam. Tony suggested to Carl and Ensign after pouring himself a glass of wine. Although this ball was held in his name, he only now realized that it was all Obadiah's doing. Forget it. I'm not interested in this. Yingson said a little uninterested and rejected Tony's invitation. Me? I have a woman, so forget it. Carl said to Tony calmly after taking a sip of wine. Hey. Hey. Don't be such a killjoy. Want to go play together? We can still have fun even if we don't do that. By the way, I didn't expect your taste is so unique, Carl. Tony said to Carl and Ensign a little helplessly, and then he thought of something and said to Carl with an expression that said I understand. By the way, use the favor you owe me to perfect the super gene that Stark Industries once researched. I want that thing, and I want a super gene without side effects. Carl naturally knew what Tony was talking about when he saw his expression, and then said to him seriously. What do you want that thing for? You're not going to give it to her, are you? After hearing Carl's words, she was a little suspicious, and then she immediately thought of something and exclaimed. Yes, I need it myself, so you just do the research. Tell me what you need. Or you can recruit people from some university laboratories. Carl said to Tony calmly, directly told him his plan, and made a proposal to him. What are you talking about? Yingson looked at Carl and Tony in confusion, not knowing what they were talking about. I'm talking about having Tony research and perfect Stark Industries super gene. I'm going to inject it into my wife and myself. The super gene can enhance physical fitness, increase lifespan, and even restore youth. My wife has been a little anxious lately, so I plan to help her regain her youth. Carl explained to Ensign indifferently. This was not a secret that could not be told, although Carl did not hide it when he was with Aunt May. This is a bit difficult. After all, I'm not an expert in biology. I can do some research and poach people from university laboratories. Tony agreed after hearing Carl's words. After all, Carl mentioned using favors. It will be good for you if you gore it out. Look at how weak you are now. I doubt if you can last 3 minutes. Carl said to Tony indifferently, and then raised his eyebrows and said to Tony as if asking him whether he could do it or not. Fuck. Of course I can do it. How can it be only 3 minutes? Forget it, I still have a big hole in my chest, I can't inject the super gene. I've thought about it myself, and if I inject it, the reaction will directly allow the missile fragments to go directly into the heart through the blood vessels. Tony yelled loudly at Carl at RST, and then explained the reason with a bit of loneliness. I can help you take out the fragments, and even repair the big hole in your chest, but not now. You should study the super gene RST. There are some things I can't tell you. Carl said to Tony casually. What? Can you help me remove the fragments and repair the wound? Okay, then I'll set up a laboratory RST. Tony was very surprised at RST, but after hearing Carl say it was not the time, he was helpless and had to prepare to study the super gene RST. Okay, see you in the evening. Yingson, you can come too. You can't stay at home all the time. I'm leaving RST. Carl stood up and said to Tony and Yingson, and advised Yingson, then disappeared on the spot using instant teleportation. Tony and Yingson were left staring at each other in astonishment. They knew that Carl had to go into the dark place and the shadow world before he could leave, but now he had disappeared without even having to go into the shadows of darkness. Shit, Carl's strength has increased again. Once the gene research is out, I will nightly spank Carl hard. By the way, Yingson, you should also get the injection when the time comes. Tony cursed directly at the place where Carl had just sat, and then he thought of something and said to Yingson, let's study at RST, maybe I can help a little. Yingson said disapprovingly. Okay, I'll set up a laboratory RST. By the way, I've been planning to support your hometown with funds and materials recently, so you don't have to worry too much. Tony said to Yingson, and he did not forget what he had promised before, but was already preparing for it. Thank you, Tony. Yingson thanked Tony sincerely. Chapter 30 Next Plan. After Carl returned home, he found that Aunt May had already returned and was busy in the kitchen. Because Carl actually liked Chinese food, Aunt May had been learning how to cook authentic Chinese food these days, and the family has always eaten Chinese food. Carl walked behind Aunt May, put his arms around her waist, and smelled her fragrance. Tony invites me to a dance tonight. How about you go with me? Carl said softly, leaning his head on Aunt May's shoulder. What? Tony Stark invited you to a dance, and you went to save him yesterday? I don't want to, I have a lot of things to do at home. Aunt May turned her head and looked at Carl in surprise, and then said to Carl a little lonely. Well, I rescued him from the Middle East yesterday. Let's go together, okay? Let Wanda and the others do anything, okay? Carl said to Aunt May with a gentle face and kissed her on her little mouth. Well, okay. Aunt May agreed after seeing Carl's expectant eyes. The reason she refused was because she felt that she was old and ugly, while Carl was still young and handsome, and it was not appropriate for them to be like this. These are all caused by Aunt May's own psychology. She now looks not much different from a girl in her 20s, but in comparison, Aunt May appears more mature, like a ripe peach. Time seems to have left no traces on her face. Okay, then let's go together in the evening. There's no need to cook. Let the little ones order pizza by themselves. I'll take you to buy a dress. How about that? Carl untied Aunt May's apron and spoke softly. But didn't you give me a dress last time? Can't I just wear that? Aunt May looked at Carl a little puzzled, because the previous dress didn't look cheap, and now she had to buy another dress for a ball. She was a little confused. You are now my lover, and I am a shareholder of Stark Industries. I sold all my stocks at a high price when Tony held a press conference and made $60 billion. After Tony announced the closure of the weapons manufacturing department, I bought a large amount again and acquired some scattered shares. So now I am one of the shareholders of Stark Industries. I guess you will have to buy clothes every day in the future. Carl explained with a smile as he looked at Aunt May. What? A shareholder of Stark Industries? Well, let's go. Aunt May looked at Carl in surprise. She had never expected that Carl would suddenly become a shareholder of Stark Industries. Even though Tony had closed down its weapons manufacturing department, Stark Industries was still a behemoth. Okay, let's go, let me see how beautiful my Aunt May will be in a gorgeous dress. Carl said to Aunt May frivolously, but Aunt May rolled her eyes at Carl. Then Carl took Aunt May to a high-end dress shop in Manhattan in a Lamborghini. After Carl and Aunt May walked into the high-end dress shop, someone came up to them immediately. Both Carl and Aunt May had outstanding temperaments, and they looked rich and noble. Then the two of them customized and tried on various dresses in the store. On the other side, after Nick Fury learned that Tony Stark suddenly returned from the Middle East, he immediately asked Coulson to end out the situation, but every time Coulson could only make an appointment with Pepper and could not even meet Tony Stark. Tony Stark's identity was not an ordinary businessman, otherwise how could Coulson wait honestly? It is estimated that they will directly bring agents into Tony's mansion and force him to tell what happened. Although S.H.I.E.L.D. is there to protect the world's safety, it also depends on your identity. If you don't have identity, capital, or connections, what can you do even if you are rich? You will still be easily controlled by S.H.I.E.L.D. Because they can even make all kinds of certificates at will, CIA, FBI, and other identities. Unless the other party is uncontrollable, or their identity, capital, and relationships are too strong, making it impossible for them to use special means, they will wait obediently. Although Nick Fury did not send agents to monitor Carl, he did not miss any news. He even knew that Carl had become a shareholder of Stark Industries. He even suspected that the account holder they could not track before might be Carl, and guessed if Carl had something to do with Tony Stark's kidnapping. After Tony Stark was kidnapped, Carl bought stocks frantically when the stock price fell. This was not normal at all, but because he was afraid of Carl, Nick Fury did not take any action. He just observed secretly, or prepared to get some information from Tony. It's not that he hasn't thought about taking down Aunt May or Wanda, but he probably would have a complete falling out with Carl, or even slaughter S.H.I.E.L.D. directly. He racked his brains but still couldn't figure out where those ninjas came from. It seemed like they were impossible to kill, endless. This was one of the reasons why he was afraid of Carl. Even Carl himself could disappear on the spot. Otherwise, why would Carl let Carl go? He might not have a way to punish Carl's freezing ability, but don't forget that there are mutants in this world. He also talked to Charles, who said that Carl is not a mutant. If he wants to take action against Carl, then Nick must change the current situation of the mutants. Naturally, Nick couldn't agree to this. He knew that many laboratories were researching mutants, even S.H.I.E.L.D. had one. Not to mention that this idea wouldn't pass the Security Council, and even government members wouldn't agree to it. The cost was too high, so naturally they broke up. Carl had no idea that Nick Fury had even contacted Charles in order to deal with him, otherwise he would probably end an opportunity to kill Nick directly. After all, he would not allow someone who was always thinking about him to exist. He did feel the presence of the quantum pager in Nick's pocket before, but how could an old fox like Nick not have a backup plan? He must have arranged a backup plan before coming to see Carl, even if he didn't know that Carl knew about this thing at the time. Chapter 31 Attending the Dance. At night, Tony and Yingson drove their sports cars to the dance venue. After arriving, they were photographed by a large number of reporters. Yingson was a little uncomfortable, but Tony handled it like an experienced person and whispered to Yingson. "Why hasn't Carl come yet? Did you call him just now?" "I called," he said right away, "but I haven't seen him yet." Yingson gave an awkward smile to the camera, then leaned over to Tony's ear and said, "Boom boom boom." As soon as Yingson finished speaking, a black sports car drove over from a distance. It was the kind they had never seen before. After all, Carl's Lamborghini had not yet released this model at this time. Not to mention that he was very fast. The car slowly stopped at the end of the red carpet. Carl opened the door and got out of the car. He was wearing a black suit that set off his burly figure. Carl walked to the other side, opened the door of the Lamborghini, and Aunt May in a red dress slowly got out of the car. The appearance of the two of them immediately attracted the attention of the whole audience. Carl's tall and handsome appearance, and Aunt May's mature and sexy charm. Aunt May took Carl's hand and walked into the hotel, while the Lamborghini started automatically and drove to the parking lot. Hey, he is actually one of the current shareholders of Stark Industries. Carl Augustin Jong. Don't stop me, I want to get his RST hand report. A reporter looked through his cell phone, then exclaimed, and squeezed towards Carl's seat. But he was not the only one who discovered the news. Many reporters found out and wanted to interview Carl immediately, but Carl almost ignored them and walked directly towards Tony and Inson. With Aunt May. Let me introduce you, my love, May Augustin. Carl introduced Tony and Inson indifferently, and even changed Aunt May's last name directly, because May Parker was changed after he married Richard Ben Parker. Carl now took the initiative to change it to his own last name. Aunt May glared at Carl in shame and anger, but did not object. Hello, I'm Carl's friend. I guess you should know me. I'm Tony Stark. Tony introduced himself to Aunt May in a cocky manner and even wanted to give her a hug. But after seeing Carl's murderous look, he immediately changed to a handshake. However, Carl got a step ahead and shook Tony's hand and looked at him with a half smile. Yours, just call me Yingson, I'm also Carl's friend. Yingson saw how Carl treated Tony just now, and he was tactful enough not to make any move. Hello, I'm Carl's lover. Aunt May felt a little embarrassed when she said the last part. After all, she always felt a little uncomfortable facing Tony and Inson. After all, Tony Stark was a billionaire, even the president of Stark Industries. If it weren't for Carl, she would have no qualifications to know him. As for Inson, although she didn't know his identity, she thought he was not ordinary to be able to become friends with Carl and Tony. Okay, let's go in, and remember to have fun later. After Tony said that, he took the lead and walked into the hotel ballroom. Carl also went in with Aunt May. After Inson went in, he found a place to stay. While Tony looked around as if he was looking for today's target. Tony walked to the bar and asked for a drink. Agent Carlson next to him happened to see Tony and said, Hello, Mr. Tony Stark, my name is Agent Carlson. Oh yeah, you are that what? Yes, the Strategic National Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau. Yeah, oh god, you guys should really change that name. Yes, that's what they all said. I know you're not doing well right now, and there are some unknown things I need to know. When are you free? How about tomorrow? I'll meet you at the Stark Industries building at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Oh okay, tomorrow. Yes, I have something to do now. Bye. Tony didn't listen to Carlson at all. Then he saw Pepper in a blue dress with a backless design. He answered Carlson perfunctorily and left, walking towards Pepper's seat. Hey, Pepper, you look so beautiful today. I've never seen this dress before. Tony walked up to Pepper and said, It's newly bought, a birthday present. This is it. Does it look good? Pepper was a little surprised to see Tony coming, but she still explained that this dress was bought by Tony with his money as a birthday present from him to her. Not bad, let's dance, come on. Tony pulled Pepper into the dance floor and they danced to the elegant music. I'm actually dancing with my boss in a backless dress. This is enough. Pepper said to Tony helplessly. Should I read you? After you read me, you probably didn't even remember your social security number. The RST one is 5. Anything else? I'll leave the rest to you. Okay, do you want to go out and get some fresh air? Okay, let's go. Then Tony took Pepper to the balcony outside, while Carl took Aunt May to dance on the dance floor. Although he didn't know how to dance very well and Aunt May was the one teaching him, he still enjoyed it. Inson fell in love with a hot girl, and they chatted in a place. It seemed that they were going to discuss the origin of life tonight. How about it, am I dancing okay, my Aunt May? Carl said to Aunt May with a wicked smile. Yes, but it would be better if you don't step on my feet. I really don't understand why you are so stupid that you can't learn no matter how I teach you. Aunt May said to Carl helplessly. After all, Carl knew nothing about dancing, and every time he took a step, he would accidentally step on Aunt May's high heels. Okay, let's stop dancing and go out for some fresh air, Carl said with a smile as he looked at Aunt May, who seemed a little helpless. Then he put his arm around Aunt May's waist and walked to the other balcony. After Tony and Pepper chatted for a while, Pepper wanted a drink, so he walked to the bar and asked the bartender to make it. At this time, a woman walked up to Tony. It was Christine Everhart, who had a one-night stand with Tony. She handed Tony a plate of photos. Look, this is what you call closing down the weapons manufacturing department and then conducting arms deals in private. Do you know a small town called Megillah? The terrorists here all use Stark Industries weapons. Christine said to Tony with a sneer. I didn't sign the order for these weapons. When were these photos taken? Tony looked at the pictures and asked Christine. It was LMED yesterday. Christine looked at Tony coldly and said slowly. Then Tony took the photos and found Obadiah not far away, ready to ask him what was going on. Chapter 32 Megillah's terrorist attack. Tony walked up to Obadiah with the photo in his hand, handed it to him, motioned for him to look at it, and slowly said, Stan, I didn't sign these weapons orders. Tell me what's going on. Oh Tony, don't be so rigid. After all, we are an arms company. These are the orders signed by me. Besides, the other members of the board of directors do not agree to close the weapons manufacturing department. Obadiah said to Tony with a smile, and even told him the decision of the other members of the board of directors. No, I'm the chairman of Stark Industries, and I even have the most shares, Tony said to Obadiah stubbornly. After all, not to mention that was Inson's hometown, not to mention that Obadiah even sold weapons to terrorists. Okay, Tony, don't be so hard on money. Okay, let's take pictures. Come on, yes, look at the camera, Obadiah said to the reporters in front while hugging Tony. Tony, the board of directors even wants to kick you out because you closed the weapons manufacturing department. Stark Industries stock price plummeted to the freezing point. It was my suggestion. After taking the picture, Obadiah leaned close to Tony's ear and Nally patted Tony on the shoulder and left. Tony looked at Obadiah's back and wondered what he was thinking. He was a little suspicious at the moment. After all, the terrorists who kidnapped him used weapons from Stark Industries. Even after learning about the board's decision, Tony smiled disdainfully. Kick him out? If he still only owned 39% of the shares, it would be possible. But after he closed the weapons manufacturing department, some directors thought that Stark Industries had no future, and they all came to Tony to sell their shares. Although each person held a small number of shares, his current shareholding reached 45%. In addition, Carl was also a shareholder of Stark Industries and held 8%. Together, they had more than % of the shares. What could they use to kick him out? After thinking about this, Tony found Inson and Carl, and then told them his guess and things about Inson's hometown. He also decided to put on the Iron Man suit to destroy all of Megillah's terrorists and weapons. Inson felt a little depressed after hearing this. After all, that was his hometown. Carl said it was up to him, and then Tony drove home with Inson. Because he had already made Mark III, plus Mark II, it was just 2 Iron Man suits. In order to make up for Inson, Tony decided to let Inson wear Mark II and go with him to eliminate those terrorists. Then he immediately asked Jarvis to equip the 2 suits with weapons through his phone. Carl thought about it and decided to go and take a look. Then the dance ended. When he walked to the door, the Lamborghini automatically drove to Carl. Then he drove Aunt May home. After arriving home, Carl disappeared in the living room in Ash, and appeared in Tony's basement studio the next moment. At this time, Tony and Ensign were already preparing to put on the iron suits. As the mechanical arms extended, less than 30 seconds later, 2 golden red iron suits were put on Ensign and Tony. Then they nodded to Carl and broke through the roof and into the sky. Although it was Ensign's RST time wearing it, with the help of Jarvis, he could control the suit exibly. After Carl shook his head, a pair of blue ice crystal wings appeared on his back, ying along the roof that Tony and Ensign had crashed through, and towards them. Because of his telekinesis, Carl's speed was much faster than before, and he used his telekinesis to form a sharp triangular shield in front of him. He was able to reduce a lot of wind resistance and add telekinesis to the ice crystal wings behind him. He soon caught up with Tony and Ensign. Although he could teleport directly, he had never been to Megula, so he couldn't teleport. As for the Shadow World, he had to visit each city one by one, so it was better for him to fly directly with Tony and Ensign. Hey, Carl, not bad. Do you want to compete to see who's faster? Tony's voice suddenly came from the iron suit on the right. Okay, let's compete. Carl also wanted to know his current maximum speed, so he agreed to Tony's request, and with a blue light ashing on his body, he instantly surpassed Tony and Yingson. Tony was not far behind and drove at full speed, so Yingson had no choice but to keep up. At the beginning, Carl was able to far surpass Tony, but after he accelerated, he could no longer do so, and could even feel that he was consuming too much energy. Okay, Tony, you win. Let's end Makula RST. Carl said to Tony beside him. Row. After that, Tony, Ensign and Carl soon arrived in Megula. At this moment, the town had been occupied by terrorists, causing many people to leave their homes to Even the captured people were separated into men and women. The men were either killed, while the women were bang bang dash. Tony and Ensign fell from the sky wearing iron suits and attacked the terrorists. They almost punched one by one and even attacked with palm cannons, but the terrorists immediately took the hostages around them and watched the scene from the air. He knew Tony could handle it. Sure enough, the automatic aiming of Tony's suit locked onto the head of each terrorist, and then struck them within 0.1 seconds. After that, all the terrorists fell down, and then Tony destroyed all of Stark Industries' weapons. It passed Jarvis's test and took Yingson to the next place. They took off and rose to about FTY meters. Boom. Just like in the timeline, Tony was knocked down by a tank's shot. Yingson called Tony in the channel in panic. I'm Ensign, a shit. After Tony stood up from a big pit, he read a micro-missile at the tank, and then walked directly in the opposite direction. Boom. Carl watched the scene and couldn't help but think of a sentence, a real man never looks back at the explosion. Of course, he didn't say it out loud, otherwise Tony would probably be very proud of himself. Again. Tony then took Ensign to clear out all the weapons and terrorists from Stark Industries around them. And then landed in front of Carl. How about it, are you envious, Ice Boy? Tony said to Carl with a frivolous look. Okay, stop being silly. Go back RST. I'll take you back. If you go directly into the range of the United States, I don't believe they won't send 2 F-22s to shoot you down. Carl said to Tony speechlessly. No, I said I will never enter your world again, goodbye. Tony had a look of rejection on his face, then he lowered his mask and ran away. Carl looked at the scene and smiled inexplicably, saying, "You will cry later," and then took Ensign into the Shadow World and headed for New York. Chapter 33 Tony encounters a fighter. Tony flew into the sky above the United States at a high speed and was immediately detected by the Air Force radar. Just as Carl said, after a period of time, they sent 2 F-22s to intercept Tony, and launched an attack after calling many times. The Air Force commander also found Rhodes, and Rhodes thought about it and called Tony. Hey Tony, The radar at our Air Force Base detected an unidentified object. Have you researched some new technology? You'd better tell me sooner, or I'll shoot it down. Rhodes said after dialing Tony's number. No, Rod, I'm not researching any technology. What are you doing? Why is it so noisy over there? What did you say? I'm driving, so you know. Well, since it's not yours, let's shoot it down. After saying that, Rhodes hung up the phone and ordered the Gurjets to attack. Tony cursed and began to dodge the Gurjets' attacks. The opponent even launched a missile directly. Tony asked Jarvis to release jammers to barely destroy the opponent's missile. And then called Rhodes again. Hey Tony, you still have time to tell me that thing is yours. Why are you still making so much noise? There. Rod, I'm running, so the noise is louder. Hey. You just told me you were driving. I started at the park and now I'm running. You know what I mean, Rod. Boom. Tony, what's going on? Why are there explosions there? Hey, okay Rod, that thing is mine, I'm in it, stop attacking it damn it. What, you're in there? Stop attacking, let the enemy leave, now. Rhodes walked to a headset, picked it up and immediately said to the two pilots in the GDR. After all, if Tony was really shot down, it would be a big deal. Although Stark Industries closed its weapons manufacturing department, it is still a behemoth, even a capital. Yes. Lieutenant Colonel Rhodes, the target has disappeared. Oh. My God. Rhodes was relieved after hearing the pilot's words, but then he heard that it was under the GDR plane, and then a GDR plane flew over. Tony broke the wing of the GDR plane, and the GDR plane crashed. The pilot ejected immediately, but the parachute was stuck and could not open. When he was about to fall to the ground, Tony opened his parachute and left, and the second GDR plane did not chase after him because of Rhodes' order. When Tony returned home, Carl and Ensign had already returned and were sitting on the sofa drinking his treasured wine. After Tony fell into the underground studio, the robotic arm was unable to take off his suit because many parts were damaged, causing many parts to get stuck. Hey, our baby Tony got hit by a Gurjet. Look at the bullet holes on his suit. It's so tragic. Carl said to Tony while holding a wine glass and teasing him with a smile on his face. Tony, you're not really being chased by a Gurjet, are you? Ordinary bullets shouldn't be able to leave any marks on your battle suit. After hearing Carl's words, Ensign looked at Tony suspiciously. After all, he was also involved in the manufacturing of Tony's battle suit, so he naturally knew how its defense was. Oh shit, Carl, you're such a pessimist. The Air Force sent two F-22s to chase me. If I hadn't made a phone call to Rod, they would have chased me home. Tony said to Carl helplessly. He didn't expect that what Carl said was so accurate. There were actually Gurjets chasing him. Ha 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 ha, to use an Eastern saying, if you don't listen to good advice, you will suffer the consequences. Carl said to Tony with a smile, and watched Tony being manipulated by the mechanical arm. Then Carl saw Pepper coming down, and looked at the bullet hole on Tony's suit and exclaimed. Is that a bullet hole, Tony? What are you doing? Are you going to GHT terrorists? Tony. Hey, Pepper, I'm just going to destroy Stark Industries weapons. Really, I'm any, believe me. When Tony was explaining to Pepper, Ensign quietly slipped away from the stairs. After all, this was Tony and Pepper's business, and he didn't want to get involved. Carl disappeared from the spot in an instant, leaving Tony and Pepper alone. Tony calmed Pepper down after some explanation. After all, they both had feelings for each other in their hearts, but they just didn't express it. Then Tony asked Pepper to go to his OFCE to hack into Obadiah's computer. He wanted to know what kind of smuggling arms deals were in it. Pepper didn't agree at RST. But in the end she was moved by Tony's sincerity and agreed. On the other side, Carl brought Yingson to the biological laboratory established by Tony. Since Yingson had 2 doctoral degrees in cell biology and medicine, Carl asked Yingson to help him study genes. and said that he would help Yingson vigorously develop his hometown. He even sent a batch of supplies to his hometown, together with the supplies prepared by Tony. Yingson naturally agreed. After he learned that his hometown had suffered a terrorist attack a long time ago, he had thought about staying in his hometown to help the people there, but what he could do was just a drop in the bucket. He had no money, no power, and could not change the current situation in his hometown at all. Carl and Tony could certainly do it easily, but he did not want them to help him. Instead, he planned to work for Tony or Carl to let them help his hometown. He also knew that Tony and Carl would naturally help him if he brought it up, but how many times could they help him? Besides, brothers would always settle accounts with each other, so he decided to use his own abilities to make his hometown better, just in a different way. Not bad. I'll have to trouble you in the future, Yingson. Carl said to him after taking Yingson into the laboratory. That's nothing. I should be the one thanking you. First you saved my life, and then you helped my hometown. I can only repay you with my little knowledge. Yingson shook his head and said to Carl. Then the two of them entered the laboratory and found that most of the experimental equipment were there. Of course, only Yingson could understand these, and Carl knew nothing at all. What can you expect a high school graduate to know? Even though he was a college student in his previous life, it's hard to describe. Chapter 34 Ancient One's Visit. After Carl and Yingson finished looking at the laboratory, Carl sent Yingson back to Tony's house, while he walked on the street, thinking about his next move. He could barely be considered friends with Tony and Yingson now. He was thinking about whether or not to take out the spider serum. After all, the spider serum was the thing that directly created Spider-Man. With his status as a person, now that he has the key formula for spider serum, he can naturally breed super spiders and produce spider serum, but he is not sure whether these things will be circulated later, because spider serum is much better than Stark Industries super gene. In the Civil War timeline, Peter even caught the Winter Soldier's mechanical arm with one hand, and defeated the Winter Soldier and Falcon alone. It can be seen how powerful it is. If the military, S.H.I.E.L.D., Osborn, and other institutions knew about it, there would probably be endless troubles. In the end, Carl decided not to take out the spider serum RST, and wait until he conquered a few biological masters to study it himself. It's not that he doesn't trust Tony and Yingson. Even Natasha can lurk around Tony, and it's really hard for her to keep it from getting out. The reason why his Iron Man suit was not snatched by a large department was because Stark Industries still had connections left by Howard, and in fact, all countries could manufacture Iron Man suits, but what they lacked was Tony's energy. That is, a small reactor. But even Obadiah was able to create the Ironmonger with just a design drawing. Which shows that the Iron Man suit is not impossible to make. So Carl should be cautious, mainly because he doesn't want Aunt May and the others to be disturbed or hurt. Carl was walking on the street when he suddenly found something wrong around him. Even the buildings began to turn upside down. A blue light ashed in Carl's eyes. When he saw this scene, he knew who it was. Now he nearly appeared. Then a space door with sparks ashing around it appeared in front of him, and a man in a yellow robe and a hood walked out of it. The person who came was the Guardian of the Earth, the Supreme Sorcerer of Kamtaj, Ancient One, who was also the holder of the Time Stone. Carl looked at the person in front of him cautiously and was ready to attack at any time. The temperature around him had begun to drop, and ice began to form on the walls of space. Don't be nervous, Carl. I won't attack you. Based on my observation of you, you should know me. Goo. Yi said slowly as he looked at Carl, who was ready to attack at any time. Hello, Supreme Sorcerer, Mr. Ancient One. Carl said to Ancient One indifferently, and thought to himself, as expected, he had guessed before that Ancient One was secretly observing him, but he didn't expect that he guessed it right. Haha, you do know me, and you should know a lot of things. I guessed it from the fact that you went to rescue Tony Stark and seized the opportunity to make him owe you a favor. Ancient One said to Carl in an affirmative tone. So, Master Ancient One, you came to see me. After hearing what Ancient One said, Karl did not let down his guard, but remained ready to attack at any time. I came to you just to tell you that you don't have to be afraid of me. I won't attack you. I have traveled through the multiverse in my mind, and I know my own ending. I also know that this universe will be the same as most universes, so you can just go ahead and do it. As long as it doesn't harm the Earth, I won't care. Ancient One didn't care about Karl's condition and said to him slowly. So what kind of future do you see now? Karl asked Guyi without letting his guard down. I can't see the future now. Even with the time stone, the future has become extremely vague and impossible to see through since you entered this universe. The ending has also become uncertain. Whether it is good or bad depends on your thoughts. And based on my observations over the past few days, you are not an ambitious person, so I know you are on the side of the Earth. Ancient One explained to Karl calmly. Is that so? After hearing what Ancient One said, Karl reacted on himself and realized that he really wasn't cut out to be a supervillain. He just wanted to protect his own little piece of land, his wife and children, and after coming to the Marvel Universe, he had been preparing for self-protection and hadn't thought about what he wanted to do at all. Okay, when you have time you can come to Kamtaj and sit down. I believe you should know the location of the New York Temple. Ancient One said to Karl, who was in deep thought, and then Karl appeared in the original block, and everything around him remained unchanged. Karl shook his head and continued walking home. He did not worry about what he needed to do. All he wanted was to do whatever he wanted. After all, the Earth was where he lived, so he would naturally do his duty when asked to contribute. If the Earth was really destroyed, where would he go? To be free? What's more, the sky is falling and there is a high customization. Now Odin of Asgard is still alive, and the Ancient One has not fallen yet. The Earth may not be destroyed, not to mention Big Mom Marvel. Karl is not in a hurry, but he has been unable to gore out the sign-in mechanism of the system, and the system has not even responded until now. After Karl returned home with the thought, he looked at Wanda and Pirat on the sofa. Their faces were not looking good. Karl didn't know what happened, but turned to look at Aunt May. I told them that Tony is your friend. You can't keep hiding these things from them. You have to tell them and have a good talk with them, okay, Karl? Aunt May walked up to Karl and said gently. Okay, you go upstairs Rst. Karl said helplessly to Aunt May. After all, Aunt May had told them everything, and now they had no choice but to know the truth. Wanda, Pirat, I know you hate Tony because of that missile, but I can be 100% sure that Tony has never sold weapons to terrorists. These were all traded privately between Obadiah and those terrorists. I am not trying to excuse Tony. I am just telling you the facts, and I can show you the evidence in a few days. Chapter 35 Truth and Choice. And you are not ordinary people. You too also have superpowers, but they have not awakened yet. It should be because you are too young now and cannot reach the time of natural awakening. In a few days, I will show you the weapons order signed by Obadiah and the terrorists. Of course, Tony is also wrong. You can still hate him, and I won't care if you attack him after your powers are awakened, but you are only 10 years old now. Do you really want to live with hatred until your powers are awakened? And Obadiah will die soon. Think carefully. I can give you a chance to take revenge with your own hands. Karl sat on the sofa and spoke to Wanda and Pirat, who were lowering their heads, and told them the truth of the matter. Karl didn't intend to care about how they planned to hate Tony, or hate Obadiah, or seek revenge on Tony after awakening their abilities. After all, Wanda and Pirat were adopted by him. And Tony was his friend. The most he could do was to ensure that Tony would not die. After Karl finished speaking, Wanda and Pirat fell into deep thought. It was not that they did not believe Karl's words, but they felt it was incredible. Back then, under the ruins of the house, their hatred for Tony Stark almost reached its peak, but now they found that they hated the wrong person. And they also knew that they had superpowers, but they had not yet awakened. Okay, you guys go back and rest, digest what I just said, and return to normal tomorrow. Don't let Aunt May worry about you. After Carl said this to them lightly, he got up and walked upstairs, leaving Wanda and Pirat staring at each other. After Carl returned to the room, he found Aunt May was still waiting for him. When she saw him come in, she looked in his direction. I told them the truth, everything, including the fact that they have superpowers. When Carl saw Aunt May looking at him, he began to tell her what he had said to Wanda and the others. But, they are only 10 years old, Carl, isn't this a bit? Aunt May said to Carl with some reluctance. Besides, not to mention that his enemy is not Tony, but he actually has superpowers. And they are not in the state of awakening. These two things are enough for them to digest for a long time. We can't let them live with hatred forever. Obadiah will die in 2 days. If they think it through, I will give them a chance to take revenge themselves. If they insist on seeking revenge on Tony, they will have a chance only when they awaken their own abilities. Carl sat on the bed, hugged Aunt May and said slowly. Well, I think they should gore it out, two poor kids. Aunt May said after a sigh. Although she didn't ask what Carl meant by giving them a chance to take revenge with their own hands, she had a vague guess, because Carl had told her a long time ago that it was Obadiah who kidnapped Tony, so it was not difficult to make the connection. Well, let's take a break. Pirat, I think we should listen to Carl. Didn't he say that he would give us a chance to take revenge with our own hands in 2 days? Since he said that the weapons in Sokovia were not sold by Tony Stark, although Tony Stark is responsible, he really doesn't know. My enemy should be Obadiah. What's more, Tony Stark is Carl's friend. It will be embarrassing for him to be caught in the middle. Carl has not been bad to us, Wanda said to Pirat next to her after Carl went upstairs, but her tone was a little lonely. Okay, then let's take revenge ourselves. As for Tony Stark, I don't know what to do. After hearing Wanda's words, Pirat agreed, because Tony was not the murderer, he was at most an accomplice. After all, the weapons were made by him. Pirat also recalled the time when he was adopted by Carl. Carl would buy whatever he and his siblings wanted, no matter how expensive the item was. Even when he wanted a game console, Carl would not be stingy. Aunt May also took good care of them and treated them as her own children. This period of time could be said to be the happiest time. Naturally, he did not want to embarrass Carl by letting him be caught in the middle. After going it out, Wanda and Pirat returned to their rooms and soon fell asleep. The other side. Obadiah came to the factory of Stark Industries and smiled as he looked at the huge steel mecha in front of him. This was the design drawing he got from the terrorists in the Middle East, as well as the wreckage of Tony Mark I. Because Carl was afraid that it would affect the plot, resulting in the absence of Ironmonger and the subsequent Butterfly effect, he left Tony's armor there in the Middle East and then took Tony and Ensign back to New York. Sure enough, the bald man who was not dead yet collected Tony's design drawings and the wreckage of the Iron Man armor. He originally planned to blackmail Obadiah, but he was killed by Obadiah and his men. In the end, the drawings and the wreckage fell into Obadiah's hands, so the scene just now happened. When will it be completed? Obadiah asked the engineer next to him. The armor can be manufactured tomorrow, but we lack energy. It's like the reactor on Tony Stark's chest. The engineer thought for a while and replied to Obadiah. What? You can't build it? Isn't the prototype of the reactor right here? Can't you just shrink it? Just like Tony did. Obadiah said to the engineer, pointing to the large reactor next to him. No, it's not as simple as you think, and I'm not Tony Stark. The engineer said to Obadiah a little helplessly. After all, it is not easy to put such a large reactor into a mecha, otherwise Tony would not have received a subpoena for the hearing later. Shit, Nish making it as soon as possible. I'll take care of the energy. Obadiah cursed inwardly to the engineer and left. He would work with the board of directors to kick Tony out tomorrow and take the position of CEO himself. He had already contacted other directors and they would all support him. The next day, afternoon, all the directors of Stark Industries were present, and Carl learned what was going on from Tony, so he came to join in the fun. "Oh, this is our new board member Carl. What a handsome young man. Ha ha ha, welcome, welcome." Obadiah greeted Carl warmly and patted Carl on the shoulder, just like a senior taking care of a junior. "Ha ha, Director Obadiah, hello, I'd better take a seat RST. After greeting Obadiah, Carl walked towards his seat. His shares ranked FTH in Stark Industries, so his position was still relatively forward. Soon after, all the board members arrived. Obadiah did not wait for Tony. He even thought that Tony would not come. He walked to the main seat and said, "Today we have convened all the directors to make plans for the future of our Stark Industries." Chapter 36 Tony's life hangs by a thread. So, I plan to take back Tony Stark's position as CEO, because his actions have caused our Stark Industries stock to plummet. Even the military has expressed dissatisfaction with us, so he is no longer suitable to be the CEO. We made our fortune from arms, so I hope the directors will support me as the CEO of Stark Industries. I will restart the weapons manufacturing department and bring more Pro-TS to you. After all, don't mess with the fragrant Franklin. What do you think, directors?" Obadiah gave a passionate speech while denouncing Tony for closing the weapons manufacturing department. Carl even wanted to laugh after seeing this. After Obadiah finished speaking, the other directors present began to discuss it. Of course, this was just a show, as Obadiah had already bribed most of the directors to support him at the board meeting. "I agree. I agree. Very good, then I will serve as the CEO of Stark Industries and restart the weapons manufacturing department." Obadiah looked at the majority of the directors below who supported him as he expected, and a smile appeared on his face, and he spoke solemnly. "I don't agree." Just when Obadiah thought he had won the game, the door of the conference room was opened from the outside, and a dissenting voice came in. Carl smiled after hearing the familiar voice, but Obadiah's face immediately darkened, no longer as high-spirited as before. The person who came was Tony Stark. After he knew yesterday that Obadiah was going to kick him out, he planned to attend the board meeting. Although he had gotten up quite early, he did not expect Obadiah to have already started, but fortunately he made it in time. "Hey Carl, you don't have anything to say when you see him like this? Can you sit still?" "Oh my God." Tony didn't even talk to Obadiah, but greeted Carl directly below. After seeing this scene, Obadiah had a bad feeling in his heart. "I'm leaving this opportunity for you," Carl said to Tony with a chuckle. "Oh, okay. Then I declare that starting today, Obadiah will be removed from all positions in Stark Industries." Two people on my side agree. If they own more than 50% of the shares, it will take effect. After Tony finished speaking to Carl, he walked to the conference table and announced the decision to all the directors. "Oh no Tony, you don't have more than 50% of the shares, so you don't have the NAL say," Obadiah said to Tony with a triumphant look on his face. "Oh? Really? I now own all the shares of the directors who did not come to meet, which add up to 45% and Carl owns 8%. The two of us together exceed 50%, so this order is effective. Am I right, Carl?" Tony glanced at Obadiah and said lightly, even asking Carl at the end unnecessarily. "Of course, you're right Tony." Carl raised his eyebrows and said to Tony, You guys." Obadiah didn't expect that Carl would get involved and cause him to lose. Seeing this, the other directors immediately agreed to Tony's proposal and kicked Obadiah out. Obadiah slammed the door and walked out angrily. Carl and Tony looked at each other and couldn't help laughing when they saw this. Just now when Obadiah, Carl, and others were in the conference room, Pepper entered Tony's of CE. According to Tony's instructions and inserted the USB flash drive given by Tony into the computer. The data in it directly broke through the rewall, and then Pepper could view all the data in Obadiah's computer. Then she found a video sent by the Middle Eastern terrorists to Obadiah, and saw from the video that it was Obadiah who asked someone to kill Tony, but because it was Tony, the terrorists held back. And made a video for Obadiah, saying that he needed to pay the price. Pepper covered her face and mouth in surprise. She never thought that Tony's uncle Obadiah would actually kill Tony. Then she saw various arms orders that were privately traded with terrorists on the computer, and even a design drawing of a huge iron armor, which even showed that it had been manufactured in the factory. After she transferred all the lay into the USB drive Tony gave her, she left his OFCE immediately. Before Obadiah came back and prepared to show them to Tony. On the other side, after the meeting, Obadiah left RST. When he returned to the OFCE, he found traces of the lay being viewed. Tony was the only one in the company who could crack the Stark Industries Rewall. He immediately thought that what he had done might have been exposed, and then drove to Tony's villa. He couldn't care less now. As long as he got the reactor on Tony's chest, then he still had a chance. And now he hates Carl. If Carl hadn't interfered, he might have succeeded now. He blamed Carl for all the reasons of his failure, and also put the blame on Carl for the exposure of the matter. On the other side, Carl had already driven his Lamborghini home, and Tony naturally went home too. Tony originally invited Carl to have a drink, but Carl refused. After all, Carl planned to take Wanda, Pirat, and Peter shopping today, so Tony had to go home and continue studying the Iron Man suit. Not long after Tony returned home, Obadiah also came to Tony's house. Tony was the only one in the mansion at the moment. Ensign was still in the biological laboratory built by Tony. In addition, Obadiah had the authority to enter Tony's mansion, so he easily entered Tony's house. At this moment, Tony was talking to Pepper. "Tony, listen. It was Obadiah who had the terrorists kidnap you. And he originally planned to kill you. Outright? The terrorists decided to kidnap you only after they knew it was you. You have to be careful of Obadiah. He has been secretly conducting arms deals with terrorists from various countries, and even built a super large iron armor." Pepper's anxious voice came from the phone, and Tony listened in disbelief. After all, Obadiah is his only relative and uncle, and the person who wants to kill him is also his uncle. At RST, he only suspected that Obadiah was engaged in private arms trading, but he didn't expect that he would even want his life. What? Chapter 37, The Birth of Ironmonger. When Tony was about to answer Pepper, Obadiah hit Tony from behind with the sonic weapon that Tony had researched before. Tony froze and his face began to turn blue and purple. Seeing that Tony could no longer move, Obadiah walked up to Tony and took away his phone. "Hello, Tony, Tony. Are you listening? What are you doing?" Pepper's voice came from the phone, and Obadiah hung up the phone directly, then sat next to Tony and took out an extractor from the box in his hand. While talking to Tony about his experiences and thoughts over the years, he turned on the extractor, placed it on the reactor in Tony's chest, and pressed it on the reactor. After a while, the reactor was pulled out, and the reactor in Tony's chest was also pulled out by Obadiah. After that, he pulled out the line connecting Tony's body. After talking to Tony for a while, he put the extractor and the reactor into the box he had brought with him. Then he left Tony's mansion and drove quickly to Ironmonger's factory without caring about Tony's life or death. On the other side, Pepper happened to meet Agent Carlson, who was waiting for Tony, and then told him what she knew. Thinking of what was wrong with Tony just now, she immediately contacted Rhodes and asked Rhodes to go to Tony's villa to see what happened to him. Then she took Carlson to the factory where Obadiah manufactured the iron armor. Tony was able to regain movement within minutes of Obadiah's departure, but without the reactor in his chest to power the magnets, the missile fragments in his blood vessels began to out toward his heart, making it nearly impossible for Tony to walk normally. "Sir, you are not in a good condition right now. Do you need me to contact Ms. Pepper, Mr. Obadiah, Mr. Carl, Mr. Ensign, and your bodyguard Happy?" Jarvis' voice suddenly sounded in the living room. After all, he would always check Tony's condition. Now he asked after noticing that Tony was not in a good condition, because Tony asked Jarvis to set up emergency contacts and Carl and Ensign were Added by Jarvis later. Good, contact Carl and ask him to come and save me. Tony breathed a sigh of relief after hearing Jarvis' voice, and immediately said to Jarvis. Now only Carl can appear in front of him in a short time. And save him. Okay sir, contacting Mr. Carl. On the other side, Carl returned home and was about to take the three little ones out, but then he saw Tony's call. Carl hesitated for a moment but still answered it. Tony, what's wrong? What's the matter? Mr. Carl, I'm Jarvis. Mr. Carl is in a very bad condition and asked me to ask you to save him. Okay, I get it. After Carl answered the phone, he heard Jarvis' voice and knew that Tony was in a very bad condition. Tony even asked Jarvis to ask him for help. Carl replied in a deep voice and hung up the phone. He had guessed what had happened at this moment. It should be that Obadiah had acted in advance and had taken away Tony's reactor. Thinking of this, Carl disappeared from the spot before he had time to say hello to Wanda and the others. I think we should wait a while, what do you think? Peter looked at Wanda and Pirate with helplessness. After all, the three of them had known for a long time that Carl had superpowers, and they were no longer surprised. Wanda did not answer Peter, but walked to the sofa and fell into deep thought, because she had just heard Tony's name. Pirate shrugged at Peter and walked to the sofa and sat down. After Carl disappeared from the spot, he appeared in Tony's mansion in an instant, and saw Tony lying on the ground and moving towards the underground studio. Carl appeared in Tony's underground studio, and then saw the souvenir that Pepper made for Tony, on which it was written, Tony Stark has a warm heart. Carl took the reactor in the glass and squeezed it. The glass shattered directly. Then he took the reactor in his hand and disappeared. The next moment he appeared in front of Tony, helped him up, and used telekinesis to control the wire to insert into the docking point of Tony's chest. Then he put the reactor into Tony's chest. 2 seconds later, Tony felt much better. Huh. Thank God, thank you Carl, otherwise I would probably die here. Tony said to Carl after he breathed a sigh of relief, then stood up with the help of the wall and walked towards the basement studio. Come on, what's going on? Where's the reactor in your chest? Although Carl knew what was going on, he still pretended to be confused and asked Tony. It was Obadiah. He attacked me from behind with the sonic weapon I developed before, and I also learned from Pepper that he kidnapped me, but he wanted to kill me at RST. He is my only relative. Otherwise, forget it, I have to rush to the factory. Pepper said that Obadiah made an iron mecha, which should be the reason why he took the reactor. Tony said as he walked to the middle of a circular platform. Then several mechanical arms appeared under the truncated platform, with Tony's iron armor attached, and began to assemble Tony. It was completed in a short while. At this time, Rhodes had also arrived at Tony's villa, and then saw Tony wearing the iron armor. Hey Tony, your thing is really amazing. Pepper contacted me just now and said that something seemed to have happened to you. What are you going to do? I mean, what can I do for you? Rhodes said to Tony after rushing into the underground studio. Hey Rod, thank you, I'm NE now. Help me clear the sky if you can. After Tony said that, he broke through the roof and into his factory. Then Rod turned his head to look at Carl's position and found that there was no one there. He rubbed his eyes, thinking that he had seen it wrong, and then drove Tony's sports car to chase after him. On the other side, Obadiah was already in the factory. He took out the reactor from Tony and pressed it on the chest of the huge iron armor in front of him. Then the eyes of the huge iron armor lit up. Thus, Ironmonger was born. But when Obadiah heard the noise coming from the factory gate, he immediately prepared to enter. Ironmonger. It was Pepper, Coulson, and several SHIELD agents who came. Pepper led them into the factory, even looking for the Iron Man armor she saw in Obadiah's computer. Chapter 38 Obadiah vs Tony. While Pepper was searching with Coulson and several agents, Obadiah had already entered the iron armor. After seeing Pepper, he immediately knew who had touched his computer, and then he immediately attacked Pepper and rushed towards her. What? Fire! Fire now! Pepper saw a huge iron armor rushing towards her. She screamed in fear and ran away, but Obadiah did not let her go. After killing an agent with one punch, he immediately chased in the direction of Pepper, destroying everything that blocked his way. Pepper was nearly caught up by the iron armor. Haha, Pepper, I originally wanted to let you go, but who asked you to get involved? Obadiah's voice came from the iron armor, and then he controlled the armor to swing his ST to attack Pepper. At the critical moment, Tony arrived, kicked Ironmonger away, and saved Pepper. Boom. Pepper, you hide RST. Carl, help me protect Pepper. Tony said to Pepper RST, and then said to Carl, who was somewhere unknown through the language system. He knew that Carl must be watching there. Okay, I will, Tony. Carl replied after hearing the voice from the phone, and teleported to Pepper's side and took her out. Because his teleportation could not teleport with living beings, he could only leave with Pepper on foot. As for the shadow world, he was mainly afraid that Pepper could not bear it. Even Tony would be in pain after staying in there for a while, let alone Pepper. Tony, you said you don't produce weapons, but you created the most powerful weapon in the world. Obadiah said to Tony, and controlled Ironmonger to attack Tony. Boom. Tony was not willing to be outdone and went up against Ironmonger, but because of the size difference, Ironmonger was more like a power-type armor, while Tony's iron suit was more agile and flexible. Tony was directly knocked away by Ironmonger and even crashed into a road. Ironmonger followed closely behind him, and then grabbed a car next to him and smashed it at Tony. Tony saw a woman and several children in the car and immediately caught the front of the car. However, due to inertia, he had to kneel on one knee to barely catch it. After putting the car on the ground, the woman in the car was so frightened that she stepped on the accelerator to the bottom. Tony immediately realized that something was wrong. After that, he was hit by the vehicle, but the car did not slow down. The woman in the driving seat screamed and stepped on the accelerator, running over Tony and even dragging Tony for a distance. Carl stood not far away and watched the scene, and he couldn't bear to watch it. It was too miserable. Not only was he beaten up by Ironmonger, but he was also hit and crushed by a car. Pepper even covered her mouth in shock. Then Ironmonger beat Tony up, and then Tony accelerated and rose up, trying to kill Ironmonger by freezing at high altitude. Carl watched the two of them take off, and kept accelerating towards the sky. Even though Tony started to rise RST, he was caught up by Ironmonger after a while. At this moment, the energy of the reactor in Tony's chest was running low, even as low as 17%. Boom. Ironmonger grabbed Tony's foot in midair and punched him, causing damage to the AI device on Tony's left foot. He barely maintained his current altitude. But he still said to Obadiah, "How do you solve the problem of icing at high altitude?" Walter? Ah. After Tony finished speaking, Obadiah exclaimed in confusion, and then Ironmonger lost power due to icing at high altitude and fell directly down, while Carl and Pepper raised their heads to look at the sky. Tony used a Ying device on one foot and a palm cannon in his hand to barely land, and then spoke to Carl and Pepper not far away. "Look, I'll take care of him right away. It's that simple." Carl looked at Tony with a smile, while Pepper covered her mouth and pointed behind Tony in surprise. Ironmonger did not die from the fall from a high altitude. Even Obadiah was only slightly injured. He then knocked Tony away with a punch from behind and started to launch a more Earth attack on Tony. He even controlled his right hand to grab Tony, and shot at Tony with the Gatling gun in his left hand. Tony looked at the data on the screen in front of him showing that his suit was constantly damaged, but found that he could not break free. In the end, he used the palm cannon to hit the Gatling gun's control device and aiming system. The Gatling gun stopped immediately, and then Obadiah controlled Ironmonger to throw Tony out. Tony was running out of energy at this moment, with only 4% of the energy left in the reactor in his chest. Obadiah then read a micro-missile at Tony, but because the aiming system was destroyed by Tony, it couldn't hit him at all. He roared angrily. "Shit, damn it, you destroyed my aiming system." He was even so angry that he kept ring micro-missiles in Tony's direction. Seeing this, Carl knew that he had to take action. After all, he promised Wanda and Pilot that they would have a chance to take revenge with their own hands. Then Carl disappeared in front of Pepper, and then appeared in front of Ironmonger. Carl slowly helped Tony up. Okay, leave it to me. You should go and take a rest. Your assistant is worried sick about you. Carl. It's all because of you. I failed. I was just one step away. One step. It's all because of you. After seeing Carl appear, Obadiah said to him angrily and controlled Ironmonger to attack Carl. Carl looked at Ironmonger who was rushing towards him, shook his head and smiled, then a blue light ashed in his eyes, and the temperature around him dropped instantly. Carl slapped his hand casually, and a 20-meter-long blue oriental dragon flew towards Ironmonger and hit him directly in the chest, knocking it away, and the place where it was hit was instantly frozen. Obadiah still wanted to control Ironmonger to stand up, but no matter how hard he tried, Ironmonger did not respond. This was the same as freezing at high altitude. In fact, Carl's ice was much stronger than the one he had just frozen at high altitude, causing Ironmonger to lose power directly. Carl walked forward and took off the reactor on Ironmonger. He then teleported in front of Pepper and took the USB flash drive from her that contained the information about Obadiah's private dealings with the terrorists. Then he appeared in front of Tony again. Chapter 39 Obadiah, Death Tony, I need to take Obadiah with me for a while. He needs to atone for the sins he committed before. Of course, you can also come and take a look. After Carl appeared in front of Tony, he told him his purpose directly, and without waiting for Tony to answer, he walked towards Obadiah's position. Oh shit, are you asking me? This is clearly a notice, you damn guy. Tony said to Carl angrily, and followed Carl to Obadiah. Obadiah looked at Tony and Carl without saying a word. He knew he had lost and there was nothing to say. There was no point in saying more. Carl walked forward and pulled Obadiah out of Ironmonger, and carried him to another direction. Even Ironmonger was taken into the shadow world by Carl using the Shadow Ninja. Tony naturally had no objection, after all, Carl saved his life. Besides, if Carl wanted, he could even make an iron suit for him. Hey wait, sir, I'm Agent Carlson of SHIELD. You should hand Obadiah over to us now. Carlson walked up to Carl and Tony with a few agents and said. Carl looked at the bald man in front of him and narrowed his eyes slightly. Carl naturally knew who he was, Carlson Phil, who was praised as a good guy by many netizens in his previous life. But Carl didn't think so. Carlson was an agent, so he was not a good guy at all. He just treated people better. Carl didn't think such a person could be considered a good guy. He might only be kind to those with strong strength, background, connections, resources, and owners. If you were an ordinary person, you would take him down in minutes. Didn't Nick Fury tell you not to mess with me? Carl looked coldly at Carlson and several agents in front of him, with a blue light ashing in his eyes, and the temperature around him immediately dropped a lot. How do you know our director? Who are you? Don't move. Put your hands up. When Carlson heard Carl say Nick Fury's name in a bad tone, he immediately pointed his pistol at Carl, and the agent behind him did the same. Hey. Hey. I think you'd better put your guns down. I believe you don't want to annoy him. After Tony saw Carlson and several agents pointing their guns at Carl, he said to Carlson casually with a very unfriendly tone. After all, Carl was his friend. Although Carlson had met him several times, he didn't even remember the name of their organization. He was Denny Telly helping Carl. Get out. Carl frowned, and then a blue energy burst out from his body, directly hitting Carlson and several other agents. They were immediately frozen, and even their expressions were terrified, with pistols raised. Carl didn't even look at them, and walked forward directly carrying Obadiah. Pepper also came over and saw this scene. She didn't say anything. Although Carlson brought several agents to help him just now, even if she spoke out, Carl would only be displeased, and even Tony would be unhappy. She still knew which side to stand on, and then she followed Tony. After Carl stood in the open space and waited for 2 minutes, a black Lamborghini appeared in their sight and then drove in front of Carl. Wanda and Pirat got out and saw Tony looking at him with complicated eyes. Carl said to Speed calmly, "Extreme Speed, I need a display screen to view the contents of a USB drive." "Okay, boss." An extremely fast electronic sound sounded, and then an interface appeared on the car body. After Carl inserted the USB drive, a blue projection screen appeared. Carl then searched and found the order of the Sokovia terrorists, and pulled it out to show Wanda and Pirat. Tony looked at Carl's black sports car in surprise. He didn't expect Carl to have such technology, and even something that looked like artificial intelligence. Look, these are the arms that Obadiah traded privately with the terrorists in Sokovia. Tony didn't sell those weapons to them. Carl said lightly to Wanda and Pirat, and motioned them to come and see. Wanda and Pirat also walked forward to look at the arms order on the blue projection screen. Hey, what are you talking about? What does it have to do with me? Tony asked Carl puzzledly because he just heard his name. I rescued these two from the ruins of a house in Sokovia. There was even a Stark Industries missile in their house at the time. The two children were trapped in the ruins for several days watching the missile. Do you think it has anything to do with you? Carl said to Tony indifferently, and Tony fell silent after listening. Even Pepper opened her mouth, not knowing what to say. I'm very sorry, I hope you can give me a chance to make it up to me. Tony walked up to Wanda and Pirat and apologized to them sincerely. Now that the real murderer is here, you can avenge your dead parents and what happened to you. Carl said lightly to Wanda and Pirat, and threw Obadiah in front of them, and froze Obadiah's limbs to the ground, and condensed two eye swords in front of Wanda and Pirat. Pirat looked at Obadiah in front of him, hatred ashed in his eyes. He suddenly picked up the eye sword on the ground and stabbed it into Obadiah's stomach, then fell to the ground in horror and retreated backwards. Pepper was about to stop him, but they were only 10 years old, so they. But her feet were frozen by Carl and she couldn't move. Wanda, pick up the eye sword in front of you and kill him, then you can avenge your parents and hometown. Otherwise, all you can do is let go of your hatred. Carl said to Wanda coldly. Wanda struggled to pick up the sword in front of her and stabbed it into Obadiah's chest. Then she squatted on the ground and started crying. Carl walked up to Wanda, hugged her in his arms and comforted her. Perhaps only in this way could Wanda and the others let go of their hatred, otherwise the hatred would accompany them for a long time. Carl didn't want them to live in hatred all day long. It is better to suffer a short pain than a long one. After that, Carl waved his hand and killed Obadiah directly. He took Wanda and Pirat into the car and left, leaving Tony and Pepper staring at each other. Then the two of them went back. At the same time, the agents on the other side also noted the headquarters for support, and even Carlson was directly frozen. Chapter 40 Nick and Carl's deal. After Carl brought Wanda and Pirat back home, Aunt May and Peter were waiting for them in the living room. Before Carl took any action, he noted Aunt May and others to bring Wanda and Pirat over. After Carl brought Wanda and Pirat into the living room, Aunt May looked at Wanda and Pirat worriedly. Okay, it's okay. Go back to sleep and let the past be the past, okay, Wanda, Pirat. Carl said to them after leading them into the living room. Thank you, Carl. Wanda and Pirat thanked Carl and went back to their room. After all, they understood why Carl did that. Then Aunt May drove Peter back to her room and sat on the sofa leaning against Carl. What's wrong? Why are you so worried? Carl turned his head and looked at Aunt May and asked gently. It's okay, I just hope Wanda and Pirat can come out of it, because they are too young now, and even I don't have the courage. Aunt May said, leaning on Carl's shoulder. She knew from the beginning what would happen after Carl asked Wanda and Pirat to go to his side. Carl had told her about his plan a long time ago. She thought it was a bit cruel before, but in order for them not to live in hatred in the future, she agreed. It is too cruel to let two 10-year-old children kill people, even if she herself has never killed anyone, let alone. SHIELD headquarters. After the remaining agents called for support, SHIELD immediately dispatched other agents to support the side, and soon transported Carlson and several other agents who were frozen back to SHIELD headquarters for treatment. Although their vital signs were still stable, it would take at least a week to unfreeze them, and there was no way Carlson and the others could hold on until that time. Even if they are hungry, they will starve to death. They are not Captain America. They have not been injected with genes. Nick Fury stood on the glass outside the infirmary and looked at Carlson inside. His face couldn't be darker. He had already raised the confidentiality of Carl's information to the highest level, so Carlson didn't know Carl, otherwise he would not have stopped Carl directly and pointed a gun at him. In Carlson's eyes, Carl was just a shareholder of Stark Industries, and since his shareholding did not exceed 10%, he naturally did not need to be too cautious. Even if he was Tony Stark's friend, so what? Carlson was a level 8 agent of SHIELD. How could he care about a shareholder? And from the information he knew, Carl was just an ordinary person, and naturally there was no threat. Nick Fury looked at his subordinates lying on the bed, whose lives might even be in danger if they stayed there for too long. He became even more wary of Carl's unscrupulous attacks. He even began to wonder whether Professor X's conditions were worth it. People like Carl who were out of control were the most threatening. Nick Fury looked at Coulson again and prepared to go and Carl, because it was Carl who froze him, so he naturally had the means to unfreeze him. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s technology could naturally unfreeze Coulson, but he was not captain, and did not have the captain's strong physique and genes. Let alone 7 days, his life status would decline after 3 days. Afterwards, Nick drove alone to Carl. Because he had called Carl before, he knew that Carl didn't like people going to his house. If he really went to Carl's house, he would probably be beaten again, this time in a cafe in Manhattan. Why, our director Nick, do you have anything that requires you to trouble a small person like me? Carl teased Nick after sitting down in the cafe, and he didn't care about the people around him at all. He, Nick Fury, was here, how could there be ordinary people around him? The cafe should be full of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Coulson was frozen by you. Nick said to Carl with a dark face. Who is Coulson? I don't know him. Are you trying to scam me? Carl said to Nick with an exaggerated expression, as if to say I know nothing. Unblock him and tell me your conditions. After seeing Carl's look, Nick immediately understood that if he didn't spend some blood today, Carl probably wouldn't help. Let's have a ton of vibranium. Carl replied casually while drinking coffee. The reason why Carl dared to drink it was that even if there was poison in it, he could transform it into elements, and then the poison would have no effect on him. Carl also discovered this recently. S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't have that much, at most 30 kilograms. Nick looked at Carl with a frown. He asked for a ton right away. Did he really think vibranium was cabbage? That stuff costs almost $US per gram, and it's the kind that is in short supply. 60 kilograms, the minimum, otherwise no deal. Carl said calmly, not caring at all about Nick's murderous look. Okay. Unblock Coulson now. Nick said with gritted teeth, trying hard to resist the urge to shoot Carl. No, that won't work. You have to give it to me before I can help him unblock it. Okay, if there's nothing else, I'll leave. Carl smiled at Nick symbolically, and then stated his conditions. After that, Carl left and disappeared into an alley. An agent not far away reported the situation to Nick. After Nick returned to the S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, he had 60 kilograms of vibranium delivered to Carl with a dark face, and then began to think about Carl's threat. Since he was out of control, it would be better to destroy him. He thought about it and Nally called Charles. At this moment, Carl appeared in the manor that Tony gave him. This manor was located in a prime location in Manhattan and was worth more than $10 billion. Because Carl saved his life yesterday, this rich man had bought back Obadiah's shares and the shareholding had reached 65%. Naturally, he would not care about the manor worth this little money. Carl took a look and saw all kinds of facilities, even an outdoor swimming pool, a gym, a cinema, and a sports room, a bar, etc. Carl nodded with satisfaction and disappeared in the manor by teleporting, returning directly to his home in Queens. He planned to move into the manor with Aunt May and others. After all, it was empty anyway. Moreover, as a shareholder of Stark Industries, living in the original house was not in line with his status, not to mention that the original house did not have enough rooms. Pirat had always slept in the same room with Peter, and only Wanda had her own room. Chapter 41 I Am Iron Man. After Carl returned to his home in Queens and proposed moving to a manor in Manhattan, Peter, Wanda, and Pirat were all very excited and couldn't wait to run back to their rooms to pack their things. Only Aunt May seemed to be hesitant to talk, but seeing how excited they were, she didn't say anything. May, I know you feel like you depend on me for everything, but it's not your fault. Don't feel hard about it. What's mine is yours. You are my love, May, can we go there together? There Peter can go to a senior school and receive a better education, and he can also have his own room. The same goes for Wanda and Pirat. Let's go together, okay? Carl walked over to sit next to Aunt May, held her hand and said gently. Okay. Aunt May thought for a while and Nally agreed. After all, She Denny wanted Peter to receive a better education, get better resources and training. Although she felt a little embarrassed that she relied on Carl for everything, after Carl's gentle persuasion and for the sake of Peter, Wanda, and Pirat, she nally agreed. From now on, you should be a good lady of the manor and manage the whole manor for me, okay? Carl teased Aunt May with a gentle smile. Umph. I don't want to be the lady of a manor. Oh, how embarrassing. I'm going to pack my things. Aunt May rolled her eyes at Carl and turned to pack her things. Carl was watching the news on TV. Which was the news about Tony being interviewed. Tony Stark, now, do you think we will believe that a bodyguard saved you and was wearing the latest robot armor of Stark Industries? It's ridiculous. A female reporter said to Tony standing under the podium. Yes, that's right. After all, I have many shortcomings, so, well, I'm not a hero. Tony looked at the female reporter helplessly, then took the manuscript in his hand and read it, then thought for a while and said. No, I think you misunderstood. I didn't say you were a hero, Mr. Stark. We want to know the truth about last night. After all, what you said is just the official statement and is not worth believing. The female reporter shook her head and said to Tony, and this was obviously a provocation. Okay, I am Iron Man. Tony put down the manuscript, and after thinking for a while, he announced his identity to the camera. Wow, Mr. Stark. Excuse me, Mr. Stark, how did you? Carl looked at Tony in the news and couldn't help but smile, he was still so cocky, and then there was a roar of an engine outside the door. Carl walked out of the door puzzled, just in time to see Tony driving out and stopping in front of him, followed by a Rolls-Royce driven by Happy. As soon as Tony got out of the car, he asked Happy to move the things in the trunk into the house where Carl was. After hearing what his boss said, Happy had no choice but to open the trunk and move the various gift boxes and packaging bags into the house. What are those things, Tony? Carl said to Tony a little confused. Hey, those are things for Wanda and Pirat, a little compensation, some brand name bags and game consoles, etc. Tony walked up to Carl and said with a smile. Wanda is only 10 years old, and you gave her a brand name bag? Are you okay, Tony? Carl looked at Tony with suspicion and said. What? She is only 10 years old, but she doesn't look like it? I always feel that she is 12 to 13 years old, so I gave her a bag and cosmetics. It's okay, save them for later. Tony took off his sunglasses in surprise and said to Carl. Okay, you're here just in time. I'm planning to move now, so come and help me. My car isn't big enough. Carl said after seeing Tony's mouth twitching, and took Tony into the living room. Wanda, Pirat, and Peter had already packed their things and were already in the living room. Hey, Wanda, Pirat, these are for you, consider them as my compensation. I have also taken out 10 billion to set up a relief foundation, which will send all the funds to every Sokovian in need. Of course, I apologize for what happened to you. Tony walked up to Wanda and Pirat and said sincerely, and even bowed to them at the end. Wanda and Pirat looked at Carl at a loss, and Carl nodded to them. After accepting Tony's apology, Wanda and Pirat began to look through the gifts Tony brought them, and Tony picked one from the pile of gifts and handed it to Peter. Carl looked at Tony with a little surprise. He didn't expect that this rich dog owner was so thoughtful. Part of the reason why Tony apologized to Wanda and Pilat was because those weapons did come from Stark Industries, but it was not necessary for the chairman of Stark Industries to bow and apologize to two 10-year-old children. After all, there was so much damage caused by Stark Industries weapons, so why didn't Tony apologize to them? Even Inson's hometown was destroyed by Stark Industries weapons. So why didn't Tony apologize to those refugees? All this was because of Carl. Not to mention that Carl was his friend, and secondly, because Carl was very powerful, Tony wanted to make friends with him and deepen their relationship, so he would do this naturally. After all, a bow and some gifts were not worth mentioning at all, so Tony was so nice to Wanda and Pilat, and even bowed to them sincerely to apologize. Okay, let's pack up and go. When Carl saw Aunt May coming out carrying a box, he went forward to help Aunt May carry it and greeted everyone. Then Happy had to put the things he had just moved out in the trunk and also had to get things for the three little ones. Aunt May and Carl were in a Lamborghini, Wanda, Pilat, Peter were in a Rolls-Royce driven by Happy, and Tony was driving alone. Then the three cars drove to the manor that Tony gave to Carl. The neighbors around also came out of their houses and saw Aunt May and her family leaving in a luxury car. Some people even saw Iron Man, Tony Stark. After Tony, Carl, and others arrived at the manor, they saw Carl and others were packing their luggage, so they took Happy back. After that, S.H.I.E.L.D. also sent 60 kilograms of vibranium, and then Carl unfrozen Coulson and several other agents in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s car. After that, the S.H.I.E.L.D. people left. After Carl returned to the manor, he looked around and found that the security and monitoring facilities were not comprehensive enough, so he planned to recruit a few people with some ability to serve as security personnel. Chapter 42 Carl's rage. After talking to Charles on the phone, Nick Fury nearly breathed a sigh of relief, because Charles had agreed to help, but he had to change the current situation of the mutants. But Nick Fury had no intention of helping them at all, he just wanted to get something for nothing. After all, let alone the World Security Council, even the American congressman and the president would not agree, so this was simply an impossible thing. Even if Charles knew about it, what could he do? Because S.H.I.E.L.D. had developed the telepathic defense device a long time ago, but due to its scarcity, only a few senior executives including Nick Fury wore it. And he knew that Charles did not dare to use the brainwave amplifier frequently, otherwise he would become an idiot faster. The brainwave amplifier would cause Charles's brain to overload, and if it was used continuously, it would cause brain damage and then turn him into an idiot. As long as he takes action against Carl, Nick will not be afraid even if Charles NDS out. He has long seen through Charles's character. He will not start a war between mutants and humans just because of this. What's more, there is no shortage of things now. All major research laboratories are constantly capturing mutants for research, and mutants led by Magneto are launching terrorist attacks everywhere. Now even the people don't like mutants, let alone change them, but what he didn't know was that Nick thought he had tricked Charles, but Charles had already known through the brainwave amplifier that the current situation of mutants could not be changed by Nick Fury alone. This was because he did this the last time Nick Fury came to him. He found that many congressmen and even high-ranking officials were full of hostility towards mutants. How could Nick Fury change them alone? At the same time, he also guessed that Nick Fury was planning to get something for nothing. He thought about it and then prepared to invade Carl's mind. But as soon as he entered, he found that there was a solid barrier protecting Carl's mind, and he could not invade it at all. On the other side, when Carl's mind was invaded by Charles, the system immediately reminded Carl and activated the defense. Ding! Someone is trying to invade the host's mind and read the memory. The system defense is automatically activated. Carl was quite excited at RST, after all, he thought he could sign in again, but after the system's voice fell, Carl's face became frighteningly gloomy, and then a large number of black shadow ninjas appeared around him, and scattered outside the manor, and began to check whether there was anyone around. After the shadow ninjas sent back the information, the veins on Carl's forehead bulged. He already knew who it was. After all, there were many people with psychic abilities in the Marvel world, and there were even several among mutants, such as the White Queen of the Hellra Club and Charles of Xavier's School for Gifted Teenagers. But only Charles has a brainwave amplifier and can remotely invade other people's minds. Carl was furious at the moment, and then Peter suddenly walked up to him and said to Carl Steffi, "Mr. Carl, I am the Dean of Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, and I..." "Charles, you're looking for death." Without waiting for Charles to finish speaking, Carl used his freezing ability to freeze Peter and roared at Charles. Then the Black Shadow Ninja instantly brought Aunt May, Wanda, and Pilot to Carl. Carl didn't say much and immediately froze them all. Although freezing can kill people, it can also save people. When the temperature reaches a certain level, the person's blood and organs will all be frozen, and it can last for a long time, putting the person in a state of suspended animation. The reason why Carl did this was to protect them from being controlled by Charles. After taking the four of them into the shadow world, Carl disappeared from the spot and appeared in Tony's underground studio the next moment. Tony was a little surprised to see Carl's sudden arrival, and then he said, "What's wrong, Carl? You need to pack your things, why do you suddenly come to me? You are not." On the other side, Charles saw through Peter that Carl was so decisive in freezing the person he controlled, and even spoke to him angrily. He also found that all the people in the house where Carl was disappeared, and he could not sense them. After all, the shadow world belongs to another dimension, so he naturally could not sense it. Then he took off his helmet and said to Jean Grey beside him, "Jean, tell them to get ready. I seem to have provoked a strong man for the academy." "What? Who is he?" Jean looked at Charles in confusion. "He is a shareholder of Stark Industries, Carl Augustin Jong, also known as Iron Man and a good friend of Tony Stark. He is also the person S.H.I.E.L.D. wants me to deal with. I tried to invade his mind, but failed and angered him. He should come to Xavier's school for gifted youngsters soon," Charles said after a sigh. This. Jean didn't know what to say after hearing Charles's words. After all, he was the director of Stark Industries and even a good friend of Tony Stark. Tony Stark stood up to express his resistance to mutants, and he didn't even need the media to fan the aims. The pressure of public opinion would directly make the situation of mutants more difficult. You should know that after Tony Stark publicly stated that he was Iron Man, the stock of Stark Industries soared, and reports about Tony Stark were everywhere in the streets and alleys. His fans were almost everywhere, and Stark Industries was one of the largest conglomerates in the United States. But don't underestimate these consortiums. If Tony Stark takes the lead in organizing a consortium to resist mutants, then the major laboratories will be more unscrupulous in capturing mutants for research, and may even directly cause a war between ordinary people and mutants. Charles naturally knows this consequence, but now it has happened, and he can only accept it helplessly. At this moment, he regretted very much that he had used his mental power on Carl, and when the invasion failed, he also invaded those around him and tried to talk to him, causing Carl to become furious. "Charles from the Mutant Academy just tried to invade my mind but failed. He invaded Peter's mind and wanted to talk to me. I froze Peter, May, Wanda, and Pirat and put them in the shadow world. I'm going to cause trouble for the mutants. Do you want to come with me?" After Carl appeared in Tony's underground studio, he ignored Tony's teasing and said to Tony with a gloomy face, "Okay. Wait a moment, the two of us are not enough." After hearing what Carl said, Tony put away his smile and answered solemnly. After he finished speaking, he operated on the computer. Soon after, several armed helicopters fell from the sky. They were the most advanced ones of Stark Industries, equipped with the most advanced missiles of Stark Industries, and controlled by Jarvis. Chapter 43, Attacking the Mutant Academy. Then Tony began to put on the Iron Man suit. Carl looked at the advanced armed helicopters on the display screen. Carl suddenly thought of something. After Tony finished putting on the Iron Man suit, Carl slowly spoke, "Tony, do you still have the Jericho missiles? Take out all your weapons, I'll let the Black Ninja use them." "Oh shit, it looks like the Mutant Academy is in trouble. Come on, the remaining weapons of Stark Industries are in a factory, follow me." When Tony heard Carl's words, he even imagined the scene in his mind. He then activated his suit and flew to a large factory of Stark Industries. Carl followed closely behind him, and at the same time, Jarvis controlled 4 armed helicopters and followed behind. A few minutes later, Tony brought Carl to a large factory. After entering and turning on the power, a large number of weapons appeared in front of Carl. There were all kinds of weapons, and they were all active weapons of the US military. There were even hundreds of boxes of Jericho missiles, GPS, machine guns, Gatling guns, small missiles, mortars, etc. The weapons almost LED the entire large factory. "It's all here. If you can take it away, you can take it all. Anyway, Stark Industries is undergoing transformation now, and there's no point in keeping these things here," Tony said to Carl behind him while walking and opening his mask. "Thank you, Tony." Carl looked at Tony deeply, because Tony himself had to bear a lot of pressure to deal with mutants, not to mention that Tony decided to help just because of Carl's words. From now on, Carl regarded Tony as a true friend, but before he only regarded Tony as a friend who did him a favor. The two are of course different. "Oh shit, don't be so sentimental, just take it quickly. I can't wait to see the expressions of those people in the Mutant Academy." Tony looked at Carl with an unbearable expression and urged him to hurry up, but the smile on his face exposed his mood at the moment. Carl rolled his eyes at Tony, and then 15,000 shadow ninjas appeared around him and began to move all the weapons in front of them into the shadow world. 30 minutes later, the shadow ninjas moved all the weapons in the factory to the shadow world. Carl conveyed the usage of various weapons to each shadow ninja through the Nega mask, and then Carl nodded to Tony. Tony's mask fell down, his hands facing the ground, the jet under his feet started, and the whole person took off directly. A pair of ice crystal wings appeared behind Carl, and he took off after a strong wave. With the blessing of telekinesis, it ew towards Tony, and Jarvis started the four-armed helicopters. The propellers on them began to rotate, and then they slowly rose into the air. Jarvis controlled them to Y towards Tony and Carl, and Tony knew the location of Xavier's school for gifted youngsters through Jarvis's positioning. That is the Mutant Academy, taking Carl all the way there, and on the other side Jean pushed Charles to the conference room, and now in the conference room are the members of the X-Men, Wolverine, Logan James Howlett, Cyclops, Scat Summers, Storm, Ororo Monroe, Beast, Henry Philip McCoy, Steel, Peter Raspian, and the new member of the X-Men, Iceman, Robert Bobby Drake, Pyro, St. John Allardyce, and Phantom, Kitty Pryde. I just accidentally offended a strong man. He is a shareholder of Stark Industries and a good friend of Tony Stark. He should come to us soon. You all must be prepared and not let the children in the academy get hurt. Charles said to the X-Men members in the conference room. Strong? I want to see how strong he is and whether he can withstand my reball. Fireman John said to everyone with disdain while playing with the lighter in his hand. Tony Stark? That warmonger? So what if it's him? His iron armor is no different from scrap metal to me. Wolverine said to Charles with the same disdain. He didn't take Tony Stark seriously at all. Suddenly, several bone claws extended from the back of his hand, and he looked eager to try. Dean, don't worry. If they dare to come, they will have to run back in disgrace. Besides, we are not vegetarians. Cyclops said slowly. He did not say to keep Tony Stark and the others. After all, he was not Logan and John. He thought more, because if they were left, the military would probably start to surround this place with tanks tomorrow. After all, he was the president of Stark Industries. Even one of the major financial tycoons in the United States. Although Charles owns shares in many companies and enterprises, he only collects money regularly and has no management authority. Even so, his assets are not as rich as Tony Stark's, let alone becoming one of the largest financial tycoons in the United States, because even congressmen sometimes need to act according to Tony's wishes. Oh, okay, I hope it can be resolved peacefully this time. Charles sighed and said to everyone. Although he regretted offending Carl, he did not think that it was a mistake to use his psychic powers. After all, he had been doing this for so many years. How could he doubt his abilities because of Carl? At this moment, a sonic boom suddenly occurred outside. Boom. Tony landed at Xavier's school for young talents in his Iron Man suit. Carl followed him down from the sky, and behind him were four armed helicopters loaded with Stark Industries advanced guided missiles. Bullets, and the most powerful ones. The reason why he didn't bring other people was to avoid them being controlled by Charles. As for Tony, Carl doesn't believe that Charles dares to control Tony, otherwise he will have to wait for Stark Industries' full revenge. Even if Tony gets furious, Carl doesn't know what will happen. After all, controlling people's minds is very scary and frightening. After he invades your mind, it is no less than the feeling of running naked on the street. Almost all your secrets can be read by others at will. This is also the reason why the president and congressmen are afraid of Charles. Chapter 44, Fighting Mutants. The X-Men immediately rushed out of the conference room and drove all the students around back to the classroom. Then Charles was pushed by Jean to join them. He looked at Carl and Tony in front of him and slowly said, Mr. Carl, I apologize for my behavior. There is no need for us to GHT, and it is not me who really wants to deal with you. It's too late, Charles. When you unscrupulously tried to enter my mind and then invaded Peter's mind after failing, this matter is not so easy to solve. Carl said to Charles coldly, and after he finished speaking, a large number of shadow ninjas appeared around. The difference was that they all held weapons of Stark Industries. Some were carrying an RPG, some were holding a Gatling gun, some were holding a small missile launcher, and there were even 3 shadow ninjas pushing a Jericho missile launcher at Charles and others. In addition, 1,500 shadow ninjas almost half surrounded the Xavier School for Young Talents. Not all weapons were aimed at Charles and others, some shadow ninjas even aimed their weapons directly at the little mutants in the classroom. Walter. Wait. I think we should talk. Jean immediately walked out from behind Charles and said to Carl and Tony. It would be any if these weapons were pointed at them, but many of these weapons were aimed at the little mutants in the classroom. If a GHT started, all the little mutants would be killed in no time. Even Wolverine, Logan and Cyclops Scatter looked unhappy. They did not expect the other party to be so ruthless and even ready to attack indiscriminately. Tony looked at Carl with a little surprise, but did not say anything. He knew Carl's character, and if you touched his bottom line, he would not care about you, whether you are an adult or a child. Fireman John looked at Carl and Tony with an unhappy face, and he began to move slowly to one side. He was going to sneak attack Carl from the side and then take him down directly. In this way, he would save the entire academy. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but get excited and slowly moved to the right of Carl. Oh? Talk. Talk about what? Phoenix Girl, it hasn't come out yet, what do you have to talk to me about? The moment Charles dared to invade my mind, we had nothing to talk about. Carl looked at Jean coldly and directly revealed her true identity, even the Phoenix power in her body. Jean and Charles looked at Carl in disbelief. After all, not many people in the academy knew about it, and now Carl just said it out loud. Boom. Pyro John thought he threw a reball at Carl when Carl wasn't paying attention. But he didn't notice that Carl's mouth curled up slightly when he saw this, and then he used his telekinesis to control the reball he threw back to him. He had already discovered John. After all, when he watched the X-Men, he still remembered the whole traitor very well. After all, you grew up in Xavier Academy, but you just followed Old Juan. You are Denny an ungrateful person. Boom. And when Carl noticed that John was moving to his right, he knew what John wanted to do. Just as he thought, things happened too suddenly. After Tony reacted, he immediately launched an attack on Charles and others. After rising into the air, he red palm cannon at Charles and others. Colossus immediately stood in front of Charles and the others, and Cyclops immediately pushed Charles to the back. Wolverine, Iceman, Colossus, Storm, and Phantom also began to attack Tony and Carl. Only Jean looked at them anxiously, at a loss. She couldn't keep using her abilities, otherwise the thing sealed in her body by Charles would come out, so she could only worry. After Carl threw John's reball back to himself, he directly knocked John away. Carl smiled disdainfully, and a sentence ashed through his mind, "Are you both a wimp and playful?" Through the Nega mask, all the Black Shadow ninjas launched an attack, and then various weapons were read at Xavier's school for young talents, and they were indiscriminate attacks. Even the little mutants were also read with a few missiles. Seeing this, Jean could only use her ability to control the missiles and throw them into an empty building. Carl just smiled and continued to attack Wolverine and the others. After all, there were a large number of weapons in the Shadow world, and he didn't believe that Jean could keep controlling them. Boom. Carl condensed a giant oriental dragon made of ice and dropped it from the sky, directly hitting Logan and Bobby. Logan was NE, but Iceman Bobby was in a terrible state and could hardly move. Even though his ability is to control ice, it is not as strong as Carl's, and there is no such thing as elementalization. Logan got up and jumped towards Carl as if nothing had happened. Carl looked at him and couldn't help but laugh. Then a red light ashed in his eyes, and then he used his laser eyes to shoot at Logan. Logan was shocked when he saw it. How could he shoot lasers from his eyes? Isn't that the ability of Cyclops? Before he could think about it, two red lasers shot out from Carl's eyes, directly hitting Logan and knocking him to the ground. Carl continued to shoot at him relentlessly. He wanted to see if his healing factor could be restored if Logan was burned directly by the laser. After Cyclops Scat pushed Charles out of the room, he just saw Storm, Colossus and Phantom Flame attacking Tony Stark, while Beast was transferring the little mutants in the classroom, and Jean was using her ability to control the missiles and rockets shot by the Black Ninjas. Iceman Bobby and Fireman John lay on the ground, not knowing whether they were dead or alive. Logan was continuously shot on the ground by Carl's laser eyes, and Logan's wailing was heard. He immediately twisted the switch on his eyes and shot at Carl with full power, piercing Carl's body almost instantly. After seeing this, Tony shouted, "Carl. Okay Tony, I'm NE, don't be so nervous, he can't kill me." Carl said to Tony with a smile, and then Tony saw that Carl's body was actually ice. And it was still healing. And it would be healed in a short while. In fact, except for the torn clothes, there was no sign of injury at all. Oh my god. Carl, are you a human being? This is unscientific. Tony exclaimed as he looked at Carl's wound, his face inside the iron armor full of disbelief. After all, how could a human be made of ice, and even be able to heal? Okay, Tony, let's talk about this later. Let them pay a price RST. Carl said to Tony indifferently. Chapter 45, Mutant Academy, Defeat. Okay, Jarvis, launch the attack. Tony ordered Jarvis after hearing Carl's words, and then the 4 armed helicopters hovering in the sky launched an attack on the entire academy, and then launched missiles from the beginning, and even hit their teaching building. The commotion here naturally alarmed the surrounding police, and even other government departments were alerted. SHIELD directly used satellites to watch the footage. Nick Fury looked at Carl and Tony in the picture. He did not expect that Carl would actually take Tony directly to attack the Mutant Academy, and even use missiles. Many members of the government received the news, but after hearing Tony Stark's name, they reported it to the person in the Black Palace. After all, Tony Stark's identity was not that simple. The hearings in the timeline were all ordered and supported by many powerful generals. Only then did that member of the government dare to publicly ask Tony to hand over the iron armor. Otherwise, what right did he have? This time Carl opened Re at full power. The temperature around him began to drop immediately, and even ice crystals oozed in the sky. These ice crystals were formed when water molecules in the air encountered low temperatures. A large number of ice cones appeared behind Carl, each of which was the size of a truck. He controlled the ice cones to attack Cyclops, Wolverine, Storm, Colossus, and Vision. They looked at the huge ice cone attacking them. Cyclops used his ability to defeat it, Wolverine could only dodge, his bone claws were not even as hard as ice, he didn't dare to confront the icicle head-on. Storm controlled the storm to attack the oncoming icicle, Colossus rushed towards the icicle without any fear and collided with it. Boom! Phantom Cat used his ability to pass through the ice cones directly. Before they could catch their breath, another wave of ice cones came again. Carl watched all this indifferently, and his hair turned black and blue. It's particularly weird, and because Jarvis is operating the attack helicopter to launch missiles. This made Jean a little overwhelmed. Although there were a few little mutants with telekinetic powers to help her, it was still a drop in the bucket. Under the bombing of the Shadow Ninjas and armed helicopters, the little mutants were killed and injured. The weaker mutants even died directly. Only the mutants with physical powers could barely survive the aftermath of the missile. A blue light ashed in Carl's eyes, and Wolverine Logan was directly frozen. Carl used the lowest temperature he could currently adjust to freeze Logan. Even though he would not die, he was unable to move. He turned his head to look at Cyclops Scat, with the red light ashing in his eyes. Carl used his telekinesis to shoot Cyclops at Scat. Sizzle. Seeing this, Scat also put his hand on the right side of his glasses, and then turned on full power. At the same time, a red laser shot at Carl's 2 lasers. However, because Carl had telekinesis, Scat's laser was forced back by Carl's laser, and Scat even seemed to be unable to hold on. Carl took advantage of the victory and swung his right hand at Scat. Several large ice cones flew towards Scat and hit him. When he was hit, he could no longer hold on. Carl's laser directly hit him and penetrated his body. Then he collapsed to the ground, not knowing whether he was dead or alive. The next moment, Carl appeared behind Storm Girl Ororo, and then directly activated the elemental transformation. The thunder and storm she controlled had no effect on him at all. Carl pinched Ororo's neck with one hand and injected a large amount of freezing power into her body. Her neck was already covered by Carl's ice. Just as Phantom Cat was about to rush over, she was knocked away from the side by a blue ice block condensed by Carl and fell to the ground. Carl walked slowly to her, looked at her coldly, and then pierced her stomach with an ice sword and nailed her to the ground. After all, her ability was too abnormal. She could actually penetrate objects in the form of molecules. If she was given some time, she could rescue everyone. Now he naturally had to guard against her. Tony also slowly landed beside Carl. Afterwards, his battle suit was covered with charred marks, all of which were caused by the lightning controlled by Ororo. Seeing this, the Iron Man not far away ran towards Carl. His whole body was made of steel, and even the ground was shaking when he ran. He wanted to use his impact force to deal with Carl. Carl just glanced at him, and then the road he was moving forward turned into ice and was extremely slippery. Unfortunately, the Steeler slipped and the impact force naturally disappeared. Carl then had a ash of blue light in his eyes, and the Stealer was also frozen and was as big as a truck. Carl pinched Ororo's neck and walked towards the teaching building in front. It was Scout who pushed Charles towards the side just now. Then the surrounding shadow ninjas disappeared from the spot, and appeared behind Carl the next moment. 1,500 black shadow ninjas, holding rocket launchers in their hands, followed behind Carl and Tony, making Carl and Tony look like gangsters. Jean collapsed on the steps in front of the teaching building. She could no longer hold on after overusing her abilities. Not to mention that even without the power of the Phoenix in her body, telekinesis control was very mentally exhausting. She would naturally feel very tired after using it too much. Carl glanced at her indifferently. He had no intention of attacking Jean. If he accidentally releases the Phoenix, that would be interesting. He can't beat the Phoenix now. He would be nished if one molecule of matter was eliminated. In the original timeline, if Wolverine hadn't killed Jean with the molecule of matter eliminated, the entire Earth would have been nished. Of course, this is also due to the interference of Jean's RST personality, and this is a mutant universe without great gods like Ancient One and Odin. It is estimated that the Phoenix will not be able to destroy the Earth now. Ancient One will definitely take action, but I don't know which is more powerful, the Time Stone or the incomplete Phoenix power. Besides, Odin probably won't be able to do it. After all, the Earth is one of the 9 kingdoms he rules, although he rarely interferes with the Earth after the existence of the Sorcerer Supreme. But nominally the Earth still belongs to the rule of Asgard, but except for the wizards, the people on Earth don't know it at all. Carl walked past Jean carrying Ororo. Before he went to look for Charles, he came out in his wheelchair. He looked around, sighed, and said to Carl, "Mr. Carl, you have vented enough now, right? If you still feel it is not enough, I will give you my life, but please let Ororo and the others go. They don't know anything. Or you can put forward your conditions." Chapter 46 Carl's Conditions. Carl looked at Charles with a sneer. If he had known this would happen, he would not have done it in the RST place. Then Carl thought about what conditions he should propose. After all, it was not realistic to really kill Charles. He might die, but he could not die at Carl's hands. If Charles's death caused Jean to collapse, and her second personality broke free from the mental cage woven by Charles, then it would be a disaster. Not to mention that Charles still has some prestige among mutants, and even Old One is his good friend. Even though the two of them are at odds with each other every day, if Charles really dies at the hands of Carl, then Old One will definitely make trouble for Carl, so it is better to get some Bennetts. I want the mutant genes of everyone in your laboratory, including your own. Also, what did you mean by what you said before? Carl said slowly, looking at Charles with his eyes slightly narrowed. After all, his words "it's not me who really wants to deal with you" made Carl very confused. Well, okay, I promise you, I will send all the genes to you later, because the one who really wants to deal with you is not me, but SHIELD Nick Fury contacted me before and asked me to take action against you. I pretended to agree, and I also knew that he was going to get something for nothing, so I... Charles said to Carl after sighing and agreed to his conditions. Nick Fury? I get it. Now give me the genes. Carl sneered after hearing the names of SHIELD and Nick Fury, and then said to Charles. Wait a moment. Charles said to Carl and closed his eyes. Carl felt a mental wave coming from Charles, but it was not directed towards Carl and Tony, but towards the basement of the teaching building. Because Beast had brought most of the students to the place where the X-Men usually train, and that place could even defend against nuclear warheads. It was not surprising for Charles to have such a place with his natural resources, not to mention that this was the Mutant Academy. Soon after, Beast McCoy came to Charles carrying a metal box and placed the box in front of Carl and Tony. Carl used his telekinesis to open the box and controlled the test tubes inside to out in front of him. After looking at the labels on the test tubes and ending that several keygers were there, Carl put the test tubes back into the box. He then used his telekinesis to control the box to out beside him and walked out with Tony. When he was taking Tony past Jean, he didn't notice a ash of red light in Jean's eyes. After arriving at the open space, Tony activated his battle suit and flew towards his mansion, while ice crystal wings appeared behind Carl, carrying him away. All the surrounding shadow ninjas disappeared, and only 2 of Tony's 4 armed helicopters were left, and they followed Carl and Tony away. Even the wreckage of the helicopter was taken away by Carl using the shadow ninja. After Tony and Carl left, Charles Nally breathed a sigh of relief. At this moment, Xavier's School for Young Talents was almost in ruins. Only the teaching building was barely still standing, and all other buildings were almost destroyed. After all, after being attacked by various missiles, bazookas, Gatling guns, and mortars, it is hard not to become a ruin. Although there are many mutants in the academy, most of them are just children. Even if they are older, they have never experienced combat and training. When encountering such things, they don't know what to do. It is considered very good if they can escape by themselves. Most of them were sent here because their families didn't like them or their parents sent them here. Some were picked up by the X-Men, but they were just kids with some abilities and couldn't form any combat power at all. Charles used his psychic powers to call out some older students in the training room. He also helped bring Logan and the others to the infirmary. Although Logan was frozen and would not die, he could not get out either, because apart from his super self-healing ability, his strength and speed were not outstanding compared to other mutants. Boom! The Steel Man broke free from the ice and looked around. He found that Carl and Tony were gone. The students of the academy were helping to take the injured to the infirmary for rescue. Seeing this, he went forward to help, and Nick Fury saw the entire scene from the satellite. Because there was no sound, he didn't know what Carl and Charles said, but he could guess a thing. After Carl and Tony returned to his mansion, Tony looked at his phone full of missed calls and said to Carl helplessly, "My trouble is here. Look, there are a lot of missed calls. I guess the government will hold me accountable. After all, I used weapons of mass destruction in the country, and it wasn't just one. Thanks, Tony. Call me if you have anything next time. I'm leaving now," Carl said to Tony calmly, and left with the gene he got from Charles. "Store the genes into your own system space." "Oh shit, I still have to clean up this mess, you're such a bastard." Tony cursed in the direction Carl left, but the corners of his mouth slightly raised to show that he was in a good mood now. After all, Carl's words proved that his work was not in vain. Then Tony began to contact his good brother Rod and started to deal with the follow-up of the matter. After Carl returned home, he brought Aunt May, Wanda, Virat, Peter and others out of the shadow world, and unfrozen them, allowing them to recover from their suspended animation. After Carl was unblocked, he immediately crossed his arms over his chest because it was too cold. "Carl, what's wrong? Why did you suddenly freeze us all?" Aunt May said to Carl a little puzzled. She knew Carl. If it wasn't an emergency, he wouldn't freeze them directly. Something must have happened. Even Wanda looked at Carl angrily, Peter rubbed his head, and Virat shrank into the sofa and looked at Carl. "Before, a mutant tried to use his psychic powers to invade my mind, but after he failed, he invaded Peter's mind and tried to talk to me. IRST froze Peter and then you to prevent him from controlling you. Now I have solved the problem. It's okay. Go take a hot bath." Carl looked at Aunt May gently and said to her. Chapter 47 Hearing after Carl finished speaking, Wanda, Peter, and Virat immediately ran away because it was too cold. Aunt May walked up to Carl and hugged him. She knew that the solution Carl mentioned was not simple. After all, it was the ability to control people's minds, so it was not as easy as Carl said. "Okay, it's okay. Go take a shower RST. There are enough rooms in the manor, otherwise you will have to wait in line," Carl said softly to Aunt May and patted her on the back gently. Aunt May looked at Carl affectionately and went upstairs. Carl sat alone on the sofa. He wondered whether he should kill Lu Dan. After all, this incident was caused by Lu Dan. Although he also got the mutant genes of Charles and others, even Lao Wan's genes, Carl was still very unhappy with Lu Dan and always felt that he would only have peace after his death. Then he counted the things in his hand, 3 senzu beans, 1 visit to the woodcutter's fountain, the formula for spider serum, and the genes of various mutants. Carl thought about what to do next. Should he complete the genetic research RST, or deal with that egghead RST? Carl felt that he couldn't just let it go this time. Even if he had Captain Marvel's quantum pager, he had to teach him a lesson, otherwise he would keep plotting against him. After he becomes as strong as Captain Marvel or signs some trump card, and completely kills Egghead, Carl summons Black Ninja and asks it to come out with a time bomb. Carl sets the time to 3 minutes, and then brings the time bomb to the Potomac River between Washington and Virginia, and hands the time bomb to Black Ninja. Then he used the Ninja mask to convey the appearance of Nick Fury and let it deliver the bomb to him. Then the Black Ninja disappeared in front of Carl, and Carl appeared on a big tree not far away, quietly watching the Black Ninja enter the SHIELD headquarters. He set the timer for 3 minutes, if it were within 3 minutes. The Shadow Ninja brought the bomb to Nick Fury. If he could avoid it, he would be lucky. If it exploded directly in front of him, he deserved it. It all depends on when the Shadow Ninja NDS him. If he doesn't ND him, the Shadow Ninja will directly explode the bomb at a place in the headquarters of SHIELD. On the other side, Nick Fury was thinking about how to deal with Carl in his office. Suddenly, he saw a ninja in black appear in front of his desk, holding a bomb in his hand and putting it on his desk, and then disappeared. Nick Fury looked at the remaining VE seconds and immediately ran towards the door. The moment he opened the door and closed it, the bomb exploded. Boom. Nick Fury was directly knocked into the corridor by the door of the bomb, and the whole office exploded. He was only slightly conscious at the moment, and his ears were full of roaring. If he's still conscious, probably want to curse, fuck it. After Carl got the information feedback from Nega's mask that the Black Shadow Ninja had returned, he couldn't help but smile, because he knew that even if Nick Fury was not dead, he would probably be in bed for several days. Oh my god, then Carl disappeared on the big tree, not caring whether Nick Fury was dead or not. After all, if he was killed so easily, he could not be called the king of agents. Chief. Chief. Someone come quickly, send the chief to the infirmary. Hill immediately found that it was Nick Fury's office after the explosion, and then rushed over, just in time to see Nick being pressed against the door. Next, you have to know that Nick Fury's office was specially reinforced, including the door, otherwise he would have been dead. This is why the bomb did not blow the door apart, but it blew out due to the impact. On the other side, Tony received a subpoena from the court, and was told that he needed to attend a hearing tomorrow. Tony naturally knew that this would come sooner or later. After he announced that he was Iron Man, he knew how the government could not be interested in his iron suit. After the Osborn Group learned that Tony would attend the hearing, and that the hearing was to get Tony to hand over the Iron Man suit, he immediately contacted the heads of several other major companies and said this: we can be competitors, or even business enemies, but if the government sets this precedent, then in the future they will ask us to hand over our things for the same reason. We can't compromise. Tomorrow it's Tony Stark, the day after tomorrow it could be you or me. I agree with Norman Osborn. I agree. We can't set a precedent like this. I'll be there tomorrow. Agree. The next day Tony attended the hearing truthfully. Mr. Stark, do you have a special weapon with special properties? It may even threaten national security, so please hand over this weapon. A senator said to Tony below. I do not have. You don't have one, then what is the Iron Man suit? That depends on how you deem a weapon. For example, a high-tech mechanical prosthesis. No, it is a weapon. For the stability of the country, you must hand it over. And we are not weapons experts. We have invited real weapons experts, as well as Lieutenant Colonel Rhodes, the senator said to the crowd in the audience. Tony didn't expect that they would actually ND Rhodes. After Rhodes read a paragraph, Justin Hammer spoke. Then Tony connected the display screen and operated it for a while. Then he called up the robot experiment video of Hammer Industries and said bluntly that it would take at least 20 years for the country to surpass his technology, while Hammer Industries would need at least 40 years. After saying that, he walked away. The angry senator said to Tony regardless of the media, "Fuck you, Tony." Tony didn't care at all and even blew him a kiss, then left the hearing. Norman Osborn and others didn't expect that Tony Stark would end up so easily. They thought they had to put pressure on the government together. After all, several major super companies putting pressure on the government would have a huge impact on the American economy. Even if the stock market is in turmoil, I guess someone on Wall Street will jump off a building again. After Tony returned home, he continued to study the battlesuit. General Ross helped him solve the mutant problem before, but he also gave General Ross several sonic weapons, which were large sonic weapons, much more powerful than Obadiah's before. Although he didn't know what he wanted these for, Tony didn't intend to care. Chapter 48 Carl's plan. After returning home these days, Carl has been thinking about those biologists with superior IQs who have the potential to be recruited by Marvel. After Tony told him that the previous matters had been resolved, he solved them after giving General Ross several sonic weapons. Because the military doesn't like mutants, and William Stryker specializes in capturing mutants for research, and hates mutants. Tony attacked the Mutant Academy, and the military won't pursue it too much. Even some congressmen may just spread the news that Tony used weapons of mass destruction in the media. Ross can easily handle all this, because those congressmen are just trying to win votes for themselves. But he would not offend a powerful general for this. After Carl knew about it, he suddenly remembered that Bruce Banner's girlfriend seemed to be a doctor of biology, and Mr. Blue, who had been in contact with Banner, was also a master of biology. Even when he was knocked away by the abomination, the blood of the Hulk dripped onto the wound on his head, and he seemed to have become the big boss. His IQ has improved a lot, and it seems that he has awakened superpowers, but some of the information behind Carl is not very clear. Maybe this Mr. Blue can be subdued. Carl touched his head and thought, and it seems that Banner has been monitored by SHIELD. When Carl thought of SHIELD, he couldn't help but think of how he blew up Nick Fury's office and almost killed him. He couldn't help but smile. Carl naturally couldn't kill Nick Fury, even if he had Captain Marvel's pager. After all, no one knew what his next move was. It would be no fun if he killed Nick and the quantum pager sent a signal to Captain Marvel in the universe. After all, there are a lot of black technologies in Marvel. Even Nick Fury faked his death once in the timeline, not to mention that Nick Fury is now the director of SHIELD, and this organization is affiliated with the World Security Council. If he kills Nick Fury, wouldn't he be directly making enemies with several major countries in the world? Moreover, SHIELD often acts in the United States, not to mention that the United States can almost be said to be the financial backer of SHIELD. Killing Nick Fury is equivalent to making an enemy of the entire America. Even if he can kill him without anyone knowing, he may eventually be exposed in Marvel, where black technology is everywhere. And Carl also wants Nick Fury to form the Avengers, otherwise who will resist the interstellar invasion in the near future? Carl doesn't want to be a hero, he just wants to take away the cosmic cube and Loki's scepter. Although I'm not sure whether it will be useful to me now, I'll get it RST. Besides, how can I know if I don't try? And being a hero can easily lead to attacks by villains. For example, Tony's house was bombed and even Pepper was kidnapped. Thor is in Asgard, Black Widow has no family, Hawkeye's family doesn't even know where the Avengers are, and they were not taken there until later. Banner also has no family, and no one wants to mess with him. Captain America is also alone, and Tony is the only one who has been attacked. So being a hero comes at a price. And someone has to take the lead to attract the attention of the government, the people, and others, so that Carl can take advantage of the situation to get more benefits. However, it is impossible for Carl to form the Avengers by himself. Isn't Nick Fury just the right person? While he is still alive, he can be used. So considering all the above, Nick Fury cannot die, and he has to hold back his anger even if he blows him up. Otherwise, it will be in vain unless he tricks Captain Marvel or Hulk into coming to catch him. And Nick Fury will not take action unless he is absolutely sure. Even if he digs Captain America out, he can't deal with him. The Black Shadow Ninja can kill Captain America. After all, a person's energy is limited. Don't think that Captain America said that he can GHT with you for a day. It depends on what kind of opponent he meets. Not to mention that the Black Shadow Ninja can be resurrected from the Black Shadow world after death. They can GHT with you for a year. He would not even tell anyone that it was Carl who blew him up. There was little point in telling anyone when he was not absolutely sure of dealing with him. He also understood that this was a warning from Carl, and also a warning for him to and Charles to deal with Carl. Carl has been staying at home these days, and he has posted information on recruiting housekeepers and servants on the internet. After all, Aunt May can't do everything alone. The manor is so big that Aunt May will be exhausted. Since she has money, she should enjoy it. It is better to let Aunt May be her manor lady and not ask her to do housework. Naturally, there were many applicants. You have to know that Carl's official identity is a shareholder of Stark Industries, and he is even a good friend of Tony Stark. Moreover, the salary offered by Carl is higher than the average salary in the market, which naturally attracted many capable people to participate in the interview. However, Carl found several interesting people inside, the Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff, and even Yelena from the Red Room, Natasha's sister, but Natasha did not seem to recognize her sister, and Carl also sensed a mutant, but could not feel any of her special powers. Because Carl had trained his telekinesis before, his mental power also skyrocketed a lot, so he could feel something different. Carl looked at the blonde beauty in front of him and fell into deep thought. Suddenly, a name ashed through his mind. Mystique, Raven Wagner. She was the woman who could transform into anyone, and even her pupils and fingerprints were the same. Thinking of this, Carl couldn't help but reveal a playful smile. In Carl's impression, Raven had always been by Lao Wan's side. How could she suddenly come here? Carl was not surprised by the arrival of Black Widow from SHIELD. After all, according to Nick Fury's nature, she would need ways to monitor him. The Red Room probably wanted to control Carl for their own use, because many organizations had seen Carl's strength in Xavier's School for Young Talents. There is one thing that Carl can't understand. Hydra has not responded until now. This is a bit abnormal. According to Carl's understanding of them, shouldn't Hydra have sent someone to visit them a long time ago, or should the Winter Soldier have come to give gifts? Chapter 49 Mystique, Raven. Well, congratulations, Ms. Green, you've been accepted. You can move your luggage here after this afternoon. Carl said to the woman transformed by Mystique. Natasha and Yelena showed disappointed expressions. Of course, they did not use their real names, but Carl knew their true identities. Okay, thank you boss, I will definitely take care of your manor. Green said to Carl excitedly, and decided to move in immediately, and then left. Natasha and Yelena also left together. Natasha and Yelena naturally felt that something was wrong with each other, but they left tacitly because Yelena had changed her appearance, and Natasha had thought she was dead for a long time and did not recognize her at all. Not to mention that so much time has passed. After they left, Carl glanced at the place where they had just stood. And then activated his telekinesis. Soon, several listening devices ew out from under the table. Carl looked as if he had expected it. As expected, they all came out of the Red House, and then he destroyed the 2 listening devices with his telekinesis. As for why Carl chose Mystique, there was a reason. He wanted to see why Lao Wan sent Mystique here, what was his purpose, or did Raven come here on her own to assassinate him? Carl didn't think she had the ability. Raven's mutant gene could only delay her aging at most. Apart from the change in body shape, her physicalness was almost the same as that of ordinary people. Carl shook his head and smiled, without thinking too much. As long as Raven was here, she would be exposed sooner or later. Moreover, there seemed to be many unreasonable things in this Marvel universe, because he found out that the chief of the New York City Police Department was actually George Stacy. You know, Peter is still so young now, and logically speaking, George Stacy should not be the chief of the New York City Police Department yet. This made Carl a little confused. In his investigation, he even found out that Gwen Stacy was already 17 years old. What a joke, wasn't she from the same period as Peter? Weren't they classmates? In some universes, she even became Peter's girlfriend. And now he is 17 years old, but Peter is still a little kid. This is a bit refreshing for Carl. Carl couldn't figure it out. Could it be that Gwen in this universe is Spider-Man? That's not right. Even if she is Spider-Man, she is a character from the same period as Peter. Carl thought about it for a long time and couldn't figure it out. In the end, he just let it go. After all, this is the real world, not a movie, and he can't look at everything according to the ideas and timeline of the movie. After thinking it through, Carl stayed at home with Aunt May, and in the afternoon, Raven moved into their house with her luggage and became Carl's housekeeper. In the days that followed, Carl and Aunt May lived a carefree life. He didn't have to worry about anything else, as Green, who had transformed into Raven, took care of everything. However, Carl didn't see anything wrong with her during these days, and he didn't even see out her purpose. There wasn't even a bug, which made Carl very confused. Raven was very dedicated to the internal affairs of the manor. This was because Aunt May had a great liking for her, and she was very strict with the servants, cooks and other things in the manor, which saved Carl a lot of worry. Since she didn't do anything, Carl naturally didn't mind keeping her at home. Every day he would work with Aunt May, or tease Wanda, or play games with Peter and Pirat. He was very idle, but the situation on Tony's side was not very good. He found that his palladium poisoning was getting worse and worse. After handing the company over to Pepper for management, he began to look for something to replace the palladium element, and even called Carl for this. "What's wrong, Tony? How come you have time to call me today?" Carl said to Tony on the phone while holding Aunt May. "Hey man, listen, I'm almost done for now. If you have any other solution, tell me quickly," Tony said to Carl on the phone in a dejected tone. His current level of palladium poisoning has reached 47%, and he has tried all known elements, but none of them can be replaced. "Okay, Tony, just go with peace of mind. I will help you take good care of Pepper. She's suffering from palladium poisoning now." Carl held Aunt May in his arms and teased Tony on the phone, then asked another question. 47%. Oh shit, how did you know? I clearly didn't tell you, you already knew it? Also, can you not use such a vulgar tone, you bastard? Tony felt something was wrong after answering Carl casually. After all, he didn't tell Carl at all, and now Carl knew it? But when he heard Carl say in that vulgar tone that he would help him take good care of Pepper, he was furious. The reason why Carl dared to tease Tony so wantonly and said in that tone that he would take good care of Pepper, and when Aunt May was still in her arms, was because Aunt May had talked to him before and asked him to ND a few more. After all, America is not a monogamous country. Although there are clear legal provisions, many people will not get married, but will only live with their other partner. When conflicts or dissatisfaction arise, they will separate and look for the next one. The reason why Aunt May said this was that on the one hand, she felt that she was not worthy of Carl, and on the other hand, Carl was too strong and she could not bear it alone. Carl had to suffer every day. It might feel good at RST, but later she would suffer from back pain and even almost faint. So she planned to let Carl ND someone to share the burden with her. You have to know that Carl's physicalness is different from that of ordinary people, not to mention that the shadow mask has been strengthening his body, so he has been getting stronger, but the progress is very slow. It is normal that Aunt May can't bear it, and Aunt May even intends to let him take Green as his own. Carl himself feels incredible, but he is a little tempted. After all, that is Mystique who can transform into anyone. But Carl did not agree immediately, but dealt with it casually. Okay, Tony, you won't die. I have a way, but not now. Okay, nothing else, I'll hang up. Carl said to Tony on the phone with a smile. After all, he knew that there was a new element hidden in the future city model. Oh shit, damn it. Why didn't you say it earlier? I donated all my artworks to the Children's Association. Fuck. After hearing Carl's words, Tony immediately realized why he didn't ask Carl earlier. If Carl said he would not die, then Carl would be sure to cure him. He donated all his artworks because he knew he was dying. If you tell him now that he can't die, Carl has a way, but now is not the right time, it will be more painful than killing him. Ahem, hang up. Carl hung up the phone directly after saying that and threw the phone aside. Then he hugged Aunt May in his arms and kissed her passionately, and then executed her on the spot despite Aunt May's resistance. Chapter 50 Riven's experience. After Aunt May suffered torture from Carl that afternoon, she became even more eager for Carl to take Green in. She no longer tried to persuade Carl, but instead did some psychological work on Green, and kept saying how good Carl was, praising him to the sky. Carl was helpless seeing this, but there was nothing he could do. Because now Aunt May won't let him get on the bed at all, just because she's afraid that Carl will make a move and then can't help it. At the same time, she's determined to ND his sister to share the burden with her. With Aunt May's persuasion and guidance, Green actually agreed to give it a try, which made Carl feel incredible. After thinking about her identity, he felt that she was about to reveal her true colors, so Carl agreed. Afterwards, Aunt May asked Carl to take Green on a date in the garden of the manor. Carl walked to the pavilion and sat down, looking at Green, constantly guessing her purpose in his mind, and guessed all kinds of possibilities. Okay, Mystique, Raven, stop pretending. Tell me your purpose, otherwise this day next year will be the anniversary of your death. Carl pinched Raven's neck with telekinesis and said coldly. After all, since he couldn't guess, he would just overturn the table and stop playing. I won't act with you anymore. I'll just ask directly. Ahem, boss, I don't understand what you are saying. Are you a mutant with superpowers? Raven said to Carl with difficulty, covering her neck, pretending to know nothing. Are you sure you're still pretending? If you don't say it now, you won't have to say it later. An eye sword instantly appeared at Riven's forehead, only 1 centimeter away from her skin. If she told a lie again, the eye sword would pierce her head without hesitation. Hee, how did you know I'm Riven? I have no purpose in coming here. I just want to end a place to live. Riven turned back into her blue skin and spoke to Carl with difficulty, but there was disbelief in her tone. Oh? Are you sure you are not here for Eric? Or are you here to avenge Charles? Carl used his telekinesis to release Raven, and spoke to her coldly while leaning against the table in the pavilion. What Eric and Charles? Although we have known each other for a long time, we have parted ways a long time ago. I have no contact with them for a long time, how could I? Also, what about revenge for Charles? Raven fell to the ground and said to Carl in confusion. What, you haven't had any contact with them for a long time? Do you have a son named Kurt Wagner? Carl was a little confused after hearing Raven's words. After all, according to his memory, Raven should have always been with Lao Wan, and even had a son with the Red Devil. What son? How can I have a son? I'm still a virgin. Raven said to Carl angrily. After all, she was still a virgin, so how could she have a son? It was so ridiculous. No? Did I remember it wrong? Then why did you come to apply for the position of housekeeper? Carl looked at the angry Riven in front of him and began to doubt whether he remembered it wrong, and then asked Riven in confusion. I said. I'm just looking for a place to live, I'm not doing anything. If May hadn't kept telling me, what do you think I was here for? Raven returned to Green's appearance and rolled her eyes at Carl and said. Ahem, okay, sorry. I'm sorry, maybe I remembered it wrong, sorry. After Carl made sure that Raven was telling the truth, he immediately apologized to her. After all, if Raven was still her virgin, wouldn't that mean he had a chance? He could even say that if he had Raven, he would have thousands of wives. Umph. Can't we mutants live? I don't know how you knew this, but I have lost contact with Eric and Charles a long time ago, and I have been changing jobs and living in different places over the years. Raven explained to Carl for some reason, perhaps because she thought Carl was the same kind, or maybe Carl didn't show disgust in his eyes when he saw her original appearance, or maybe she had a good impression of Carl. After all, Carl is very handsome. And with his sturdy gore and mysterious temperament, he is simply a womanizer. Even though Riven is almost 60 years old now, she can't help but be a little moved by Carl. She has met many young talents over the years, but no one has been able to look at her with tenderness or without disgust after seeing her true face, and Carl is the RST. Although Charles did not show disgust at the beginning, she did not have a good impression of him. She was more grateful because she met Charles when she went to his house to steal food. Charlton kept helping her afterwards, but because of the subsequent connects, they did not contact each other again. Ahem, okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. I don't mind your mutant identity. In fact, I'm not a mutant because my abilities are acquired, not from mutant genes. And what you asked me before about helping Charles get revenge was because I tore down his mutant academy, so I thought you were here to avenge him. Carl said to Raven a little embarrassedly and explained his abilities. Oh, so that's how it is. Alas, Charles still insists, but I don't know when it will end. I don't have the same lofty ambitions as them. I just want to spend the rest of my life in peace. By the way, boss, you're not going to me, are you? Raven nodded in sudden realization and said to Carl a little dejectedly. No, how is that possible? And didn't May tell us to give it a try? I think it's possible. What do you think? Carl shook his head and said to Raven, and directly suggested that the two of them give it a try. After all, he had never pursued a girl, so he just said whatever he had in mind. This is good. Raven looked up and saw Carl's sincere eyes. She thought that Carl had not shown any disgust in his eyes before, and she also had a little affection for him. In addition, all the previous things were misunderstandings, and his identity had been made public. It seemed that there was nothing she couldn't try. Carl smiled after hearing Raven's answer, and then took Raven to stay in the garden for a whole afternoon and did not go back until the evening. Carl got along well with Raven because of what he had seen and heard in his previous life, and Raven had been to many countries and cities over the years. The two of them had no shortage of topics and they chatted for a whole afternoon without feeling saddest. After that, they returned to the mansion and turned back into the roles of master and housekeeper. They haven't confirmed their relationship yet, so it's better for them to return to their original identities and get along with each other. Chapter 51 Banner, Hulk. Recently, there was an explosion in the laboratory at Corvo University, and a monster was suspected to have appeared. The military has already led a team to the scene, and the monster may have even escaped. Please follow our station for more news. Carl watched the news on TV and thought for a while, because the name of this laboratory sounded familiar. Then Carl remembered that this was the laboratory where Hulk was born. That is to say, the monster was Hulk, and he seemed to be studying gamma rays for the military, but because he was too content, he conducted experiments directly on himself, causing mutations in his body, and then Hulk was born. Later, when Banner turned back into human form, he worked in a beverage processing factory in Brazil and contacted Mr. Blue. However, because his blood dripped into a beverage bottle, he was discovered by Ross, who brought people to capture Banner. After he escaped, he returned to New York and found that his girlfriend had a new boyfriend. Carl couldn't help but feel sad for Banner when he thought of this. Later, the two seemed to have reconciled, but he always felt that Banner had a guilty conscience. That means my previous guess was correct. The sonic weapon that Ross asked Tony for was used to deal with the Hulk, and now it should be Brazil, or... Carl took out his mobile phone to look up some information on this matter, and soon discovered that an old man's body had mutated after drinking the beverage, and it seemed that his blood was LED with gamma rays. Carl looked at the news in front of him and thought for a while. He didn't expect that this was news from a long time ago. According to the timeline, Dr. Banner should come to New York soon and meet his girlfriend, and even escape after a big battle with the military in the university. Carl is thinking about whether to get Dr. Banner to do genetic research for him. After all, he is a super academic with 7 degrees. But Hulk is a trouble, and Carl has no solution to solve it now. If Hulk comes out, Carl will have to stay away from the spotlight temporarily. On the other side, Brazil. After Dr. Banner discovered that someone seemed to be looking for him, he climbed down from the window of his home using a rope, and then entered the home of a woman he had rescued before. When a team led by Ross discovered that Banner was missing, they began to search for him on a large scale, no longer being cautious. Ross even ordered that he should be anesthetized with a tranquilizer gun immediately upon discovery. Next, Banner, carrying the computer in his backpack, used the terrain of the Rossania slums to chase the team led by Ross, and fooled them around until he bumped into the bald man whom he had offended when he saved the beauty in the factory before, and his 2 younger brothers who were with him. When they saw that it was Banner, they thought of what happened in the factory before and were ready to teach Banner a lesson, so they prepared to catch him immediately. However, Banner left directly after seeing that the situation was not good, and ran desperately into the factory, hiding in a place to avoid being discovered by the 3 men. Beep beep beep. Banner raised his right hand, and the value on the heart rate monitor watch had reached 168 because of his intense exercise. Hulk would come out when his heart rate reached 200, and Banner immediately adjusted himself using the breathing technique he learned from his yoga instructor. Banner's heart rate slowly dropped after 2 minutes, and he nearly breathed a sigh of relief. Later, the team led by Ross saw Banner from a high place and notified others to rush to the factory. On the other side, Banner had been discovered by the Bald Trio and was blocked in one place. The Bald Trio snatched Banner's backpack and threw him aside. "Oh shit, my computer, give me back my computer." Banner was just about to pick up his backpack when the bald guy immediately hit his stomach and spoke Brazilian. Although I didn't understand what he meant, I guess the curse was pretty ugly. "What?" Beep beep. After the bald man punched Banner in the stomach, Banner's heart rate immediately began to rise, and at this moment it was over 150. The 3 bald men did not realize that the danger was coming, but continued to punch and kick Banner. "No. I'm starting to get angry, and you don't want to know how angry I look, I promise," Banner said to the Bald Trio, enduring the pain, and the 3 of them looked at Banner with amusement. After all, Banner didn't look particularly tall, so how could he pose a threat to them? Then the military team rushed to the outside of the factory, and then turned on the night vision goggles to look towards Banner. Just as they were about to shoot, the bald man among the 3 bald men was thrown out, and the other 2 collapsed to the ground in fright. Brinsky took 2 people to Banner's place. Although he was a little confused, he decided to see what it was. When he got closer, he found through the night vision goggles that it was a huge green monster. Hulk also saw Bronsky and the others, picked up the machine beside him, and then threw it at Bronsky and the others. Roar! After throwing the bullet, Hulk roared at Bronsky and the others, and after missing them, he grabbed something nearby and threw it again. Bronsky and the others shot at Hulk with the tranquilizer guns in their hands. Although they hit the target, the tranquilizer gun did not work at all. Hulk pulled off the tranquilizer bullet that hit his body and attacked Bronsky and the others. After knocking Bronsky's two comrades Ying, he picked up the machine beside him and threw it at Bronsky, then crashed through the wall in the factory and left. After a few big jumps, he disappeared in the Rosenha slums. Ross, sitting in the command vehicle, ordered to return with a grim expression. Later, they learned through Banner's computer that he was communicating with someone named Mr. Blue, and after they returned to the military base, they used S.H.I.E.L.D's network intelligence system to quickly track down the real information of Mr. Blue, who was a biologist named Samuel Stern and a professor at the University of Harlem. Banner then sneaked into New York to attend his former university, and saw that his girlfriend had a new boyfriend. He came to a pizza restaurant, and the owner was his friend, and he stayed there temporarily. I stayed there for a while and found out that my girlfriend's current boyfriend was a doctor, and seemed to be a top psychologist. Banner fell silent after hearing the news. After all, he had been gone for so long, and she should have her own life. Then, with the help of pizza, he entered the university laboratory, logged into his girlfriend's account, and prepared to check his previous experimental data. Only with these data could Mr. Lan help him restore his original appearance. But the result of the query was not satisfactory. There was no result. Then Banner logged into the chat box with Mr. Lan and told him the information, but the other party replied that he could do nothing about it. Then Banner sighed. After a breath, she returned to the pizza shop, packed her things and prepared to continue her escape. She happened to run into her girlfriend and her current boyfriend. She also saw Banner, who then hid next to a trash can and was not discovered by her. Chapter 52 Hulk vs. the Army. Banner was newly found by his girlfriend, Betty Elizabeth Ross, who drove over. The two hugged each other in the rain, and then Betty took Banner home. She gave him Banner's experimental data at the time, because Betty had already stored the data in a USB drive and deleted the data in the computer. When Banner found out about this, he was naturally overjoyed. He could now become a normal person again. The two of them lay on the bed in the bedroom for a long time, unable to sleep. Betty knew that Banner saw her and her current boyfriend together, and she was overwhelmed with thoughts and no one knew what he was thinking. Banner was lying on the bed looking at the ceiling. All he wanted now was to end Mr. Blue immediately and restore himself to normal. As for what happened to Betty, he did not blame her. The next day, Ross learned that Banner and Betty appeared in the university and he immediately sent out the army. Last night, he was injected with the super gene previously researched by Stark Industries, and it was 2 injections, one in the skin and one in the bone marrow of the spine at the back. It was very painful, but Bronsky endured it and survived. His body was also strengthened. At this moment, he couldn't wait to compete with Hulk. After all, it is not a complete super gene. After the injection, Bronsky's spine was abnormally prominent, but it seemed that there was a change in his psychology. After receiving Ross's order, he immediately led the team to capture Bo-Hulk, and at the same time he also wanted to test his current strength. On the other side, Carl has been living a carefree life these days. He is enjoying his daily life very much. He also has received good news from Yingson that the genetic experiment has almost been successful, but it will take some time before the safety of the gene can be confirmed. In addition, he has been dating Riven occasionally these days. Because he knew that Dr. Banner would come to New York, he immediately released a lot of Black Shadow ninjas. As long as Hulk appeared, the Black Shadow ninjas would immediately notify him. Carl knew Mr. Blue's true identity, so it was not difficult for him to ND him. His target was only Mr. Blue. As for Dr. Banner, he had no way to suppress the Hulk, so he would not consider it for the time being. If Dr. Banner suddenly transformed during the experiment, then everything would be in vain. Maybe a few of his biologists would be killed, but this time it seemed that the military was hunting down Hulk. After thinking about it, Carl disappeared in the manor. The next moment, he appeared at the university where the army was heading. Then he stood on a tall building, looking down at the area below and at Banner in the library not far away. Banner, who escaped to the library, did not expect the army to arrive so soon, and he did not even notice it. After realizing that he could not escape, Banner swallowed the USB flash drive with his information into his stomach. The next moment, the army arrived and red tear gas at Banner in the library. Banner no longer suppressed himself and took the initiative to let Hulk out. Roar! As Banner was released, Hulk appeared and broke through the glass in the library. Seeing this, Ross ordered the soldiers, armored vehicles, and tanks to attack him. As the artillery rebombarded him, Hulk angrily smashed the armored vehicle closest to him. He grabbed the muzzle of the tank, twisted it off, and used it as a weapon to smash the tank's body. Boom! Carl was watching the scene from the top of a tall building not far away, and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Worthy of being the Hulk. As expected, Hulk destroyed Ross's army, armored vehicles, tanks, etc. along the way, and Betty saw a familiar tank and directly blocked it. "Let him go, please. Daddy!" Betty shouted to Ross in the tank, even calling him Dad in front of other officers. Ross came out of the tank, walked up to her, looked at her and said, "It belongs to the military, this is impossible. Take her back." "No. If you hurt Banner, I will never forgive you in my life." After hearing what Ross said, Betty spoke to him angrily, and Ross waved his hands at the soldiers with a complicated expression. Then two soldiers carried Betty to the back. Ross looked at the Hulk who was destroying everything, put the intercom to his mouth and said to the other side, "Bronsky, it's your turn." "Okay, sir." Not long after Ross finished speaking, Bronsky's voice came from the intercom, and on the other side, Bronsky walked towards Hulk with a howitzer and continued to bombard him, making Hulk retreat again and again. After ringing the howitzer in his hand, he picked up the on the ground and rushed towards Hulk. Carl, who was not far away, couldn't help but laugh when he saw this scene. He found that Bronsky was really brave. He dared to die like this even after being injected with an incomplete super gene. Then Bronsky performed a show on Hulk, causing almost no damage. Ross asked Bronsky through the walkie-talkie to lead Hulk into the attack range of the sonic weapon and prepare the sonic weapon. Soon two sonic weapon vehicles drove in from not far away. The soldiers got out of the vehicles and came to the sonic controllers behind them. Bronsky also ran in the direction of the sonic weapons, and Hulk immediately chased Bronsky. After Hulk entered the range of the sonic weapons. Buzz! Buzz! The sonic weapon was activated, and two invisible sound waves blasted towards Hulk. Even Bronsky was affected a little. Hulk's green skin even had purple marks because of the sonic weapon. Carl shook his head and laughed after seeing this scene. Ross still underestimated Hulk. This little damage could be recovered in a while, and the angrier he was, the stronger he would be. This little damage was nothing at all. Hulk struggled to pick up the wreckage of two armored vehicles beside him and threw them at the two armored vehicles with sonic weapons. As the explosion sounded, the sonic weapons were destroyed. Ross's face immediately darkened when he saw this. At this time, Bronsky walked up to Hulk with a small pistol and provoked him. This scene simply shocked Carl. He thought, "Does your mother know that you are so brave, Bronsky?" He couldn't understand why. Didn't he know how powerful Hulk was, and you still went up to provoke him with a small pistol? Boom! As expected, Hulk kicked Bronsky into a tree, and Bronsky's body shape even changed. He fell under the tree, not knowing whether he was dead or alive. Chapter 53 Sign-in Mechanism. Carl couldn't help but twitch his mouth when he saw this scene. Sure enough, if you don't commit suicide, you won't die. Ross immediately called for an armed helicopter when he saw this scene. Then an armed helicopter fell from the sky and even hovered in the air to attack Hulk with machine guns, missiles, and general weapons. However, these attacks did not cause any substantial damage to Hulk. At most, they only made him feel pain. Betty suddenly ran towards Hulk. Seeing this, Ross immediately said to the walkie-talkie in his hand, "Stop attacking. Stop attacking right now, damn it." Hulk picked up an armored vehicle wreckage and threw it at the helicopter, then happened to hit the tail wing of the helicopter, causing the body to be out of control and even fall to the ground, and the direction of the fall was Betty's direction. When Hulk saw this, he immediately ran over and held Betty in his arms. He used his back to block the wreckage of the attack helicopter and the aftermath of the explosion for Betty, which made Ross, who was originally as dead as despair, suddenly light up his eyes. Then he watched Hulk walk away from the sea of holding Betty, and he breathed a sigh of relief. After all, Betty was his only daughter. Hulk glanced in Ross' direction, hugged Betty, and disappeared in the university with a few big jumps, and even left the city directly. Ross could only order the troops to withdraw, and looking at the situation around him, he estimated that he would still have to bear the accountability of the Black Palace. What he didn't know was that all the scenes of the battle were captured by 2 college students with cameras and posted online, which attracted huge attention. Then came the demonstrations and strikes of the American people. After all, even the university encountered such a battle, even tanks, armored vehicles, armed helicopters, and that monster. Protest. You don't even treat us as human beings. Protest, is this how the government protects us taxpayers? Protest. We pay so much tax every year, and now the military is using heavy weapons in a city university. FK. After Hulk left, Carl returned to his manor. Watching the news on TV, Carl couldn't help but laugh. If protesting was really useful, then Ross would not dare to drive tanks and armored vehicles into the university so recklessly. He then sent out a few Black Shadow ninjas. He had to pay closer attention to Mr. Blue, who was his future biological research expert. Carl saw Green come to him and then sat directly in his arms. Carl also put his arm around Green's waist. Although they did not clearly express their feelings for each other during these days of getting along, their relationship has taken a big step forward, and they even get along with each other tacitly. What? You still care about the American people? Shouldn't a rich man like you not care about their life or death? Green said to Carl seductively while sitting on Carl's lap. Her professional attire, her plump and hot gore, and her blonde and blue-eyed appearance made her an alluring beauty. No, I'm not paying attention to these protests, I'm paying attention to the big green guy. Carl looked into Green's eyes and said gently, his eyes even wandering over her body and staying on her chest for a longer time. Really? Is that big green thing more attractive to you than me? Green leaned over and whispered in Carl's ear. Because of her actions, the magnificence of her chest was exposed to Carl. Carl greedily glanced at the white scene in front of him, even the whiteness wrapped in black lace. Of course not, you still attract me more, little goblin. Carl turned Green's head in front of him and looked at him. Carl said to them affectionately. Green also looked at Carl affectionately. When their eyes met, they couldn't help but kiss each other. Then Green turned around, knelt on the sofa, held Carl's face with both hands and demanded it madly. Carl could only enjoy it passively. In addition, Aunt May had not let him go to bed for several days, and Green, who was transformed from Raven, had been lonely for too long. The two of them were so excited that they ignited at once, and even felt each other's passion and madness on the sofa. It was already the next day when Carl woke up. Looking at Raven sleeping beside him, Carl couldn't help but smile. Yesterday was crazy enough. After all, from the afternoon to midnight, a full 10 hours, he nearly fell asleep contentedly. Carl even deeply felt Raven's goodness last night. She kept changing her body shape and making love with Carl, allowing Carl to taste all kinds of women. Just when Carl was savoring the taste. Ding! Congratulations to the host for getting a sign-in opportunity. Do you want to sign in now? Carl was stunned when he heard this. Then he also knew the trigger mechanism of the system. The night he captured Aunt May, the system also popped up to say that he had a chance to sign in. Now that he captured Riven, the system popped up again. In other words, if he conscate the woman, he would get a chance to sign in? Isn't this a sure way for him to have a harem? Carl smiled bitterly. System, sign in. Ding. Sign in successfully. Congratulations on obtaining Kaioken Training Inheritance, Resurrection Cross X1, Bard Mask X1, Purification Rune X1. Kaioken Training Inheritance, from the world of Dragon Ball, it is a move created by King Kai himself. It is a move that can increase one's combat power several times or even dozens of times in a short period of time, but it puts a huge burden on the body. Resurrection Cross, it can resurrect creatures that have been dead for 24 hours. The resurrected object will enter a weak period for a period of time after resurrection. The length of the weak period depends on the strength of the resurrected object itself. The stronger the strength, the shorter the weak period. Bat Mask, a unique mask from the world of Jackie Chan Adventures. After wearing it, you can summon bat soldiers. They can fly with the wings behind them, have extremely high speed and maneuverability, and their arms can emit light waves. After collecting 10 masks, you can get the entire shadow world. Purification Rune, a rune from a mysterious continent. When the rune is embedded in an object or liquid, it can eliminate the side effects inside. However, it can only be used once and disappears after use. Carl looked at the 4 items in the system space and couldn't help but feel a little confused. After all, he had signed in 3 items before. Was it because Raven was a mutant and was stronger than Aunt May? Or was it because it was Raven's RST time? Carl was a little confused, but he didn't think much about it. Chapter 54, Planning the Hulk Blood Serum. After Carl took out the Resurrection Cross, a very small cross that was extremely delicate, Carl bound it to himself and put it into the system space. After all, no place was safer than the system space. With the Resurrection Cross, he had one more life, and he couldn't help but smile. What's more, it can resurrect creatures that died within 24 hours. It can not only resurrect himself, but also people around him who died due to negligence. He can use this to resurrect them. After that, he took out Bart's mask, and with a thought, several black shadow ninjas appeared in the room, with a pair of wings behind them, and knelt on one knee towards Carl. After waving his hand to take them back, Carl placed the Barton mask and the Nega mask together in the system space. He could then feel that the dark energy was enhancing his progress a lot faster, probably because of the Barton mask. Carl then took out the Kaioken training inheritance, which was just a golden ball of light. After Carl took it out, it ew directly to Carl's forehead. Then a picture appeared in Carl's mind, which was the method of practicing King Fist. After Carl opened his eyes, he found that he had mastered the method of practicing King Fist. At this moment, Carl could use twice the King Fist, but the burden and damage to the body were also great because his physique was not too strong. Carl now looked at the Purification Rune. If he used it to purify his genes, would it work? The moment Carl saw the Purification Rune, he immediately wanted to use Hulk's blood to make serum, and inject himself after purification. He just didn't know if it would work. Blood serum should also be considered liquid. Carl narrowed his eyes and decided to give it a try. If successful, then his strength would at least be improved a lot. Ugh. Carl, why did you wake up so early? Raven opened her eyes and said to Carl beside her. At this moment, she had turned back into her original human appearance, not a mutant. Although Carl didn't mind, she still wanted to show her best side to Carl. It's getting late. The sun is shining brightly. You were so tired last night. Take a rest, RST. I'll let Aunt May take care of you. I have something to do later. Carl bent his head and kissed Raven, then spoke to her gently. After all, they made quite a noise last night. Okay, you go and do your work. I'm just a little tired. Raven said slowly to Carl with narrowed eyes. Then she didn't care at all that Carl couldn't accompany her today, because she knew that Carl's matters were generally not small matters. Even the matter of handling Stark Industries shares was given to Aunt May, so Carl would only leave if it was a big matter. Okay, have a good rest, baby. Carl said to Raven, then got up, put on his clothes and left. He then went downstairs and saw Aunt May studying something with a notebook. Carl knew without thinking that it was Stark Industries stocks, because Aunt May felt that she had nothing to do all day and wanted to go out and do a job. Carl was dumbfounded at the time. You, the lover of a Stark Industries shareholder, are going out to do a job? It would make people laugh to death. After that, he left all the matters related to the shares and some matters that required him to make decisions and sign contracts to Aunt May. He was also happy to have some free time, otherwise Pepper would call him all day long, telling him about this or that company decision, and this contract he had to sign. Carl was almost driven crazy by Pepper's calls. It would be better to call Aunt May directly and let the two women communicate. Besides, he could do something for Aunt May to do, so she wouldn't have to complain about being idle all day long. He also didn't have to worry about making mistakes. After all, Pepper was there to help teach her. Aunt May, please help me take care of Raven, also known as Green, which is her real name. She is a mutant and can change into the appearance of anyone. I have to go out for something later, Mua. Carl came close to Aunt May and said to her, then kissed her sexy little lips. I know. There was such a big commotion yesterday, aren't you afraid that Peter and the others will ND out? Aunt May agreed after giving Carl a blank look. After all, even she was surprised by what happened last night, and she knew how powerful Carl was. In the end, Green insisted on getting with him for 10 hours. Okay, I'm leaving. Christmas is coming in a few days, and the Eastern Chinese New Year will be coming soon. Our family celebrates both holidays. You should discuss it with Raven. Carl said gently to Aunt May. After all, Christmas in a few days is equivalent to the Western Chinese New Year, while the Chinese New Year is the Eastern Chinese New Year. Aunt May and her family are used to Christmas in the West, and even though Carl has traveled through time, he still wants to celebrate the Chinese New Year, so it doesn't matter if they celebrate both holidays. Okay, I got it. Remember to prepare gifts for Wanda and the others. Aunt May said to Carl unhappily, and Carl nodded and disappeared on the spot. This time, Carl planned to get some Hulk's blood instead of Dr. Banner's blood. If he only gets Dr. Banner's blood serum after purifying Dr. Banner's blood, that would be a big deal. What's more, the purification rune can only be used once, so Carl plans to get some blood directly from Dr. Banner when he transforms into Hulk. He remembered that in the timeline, Hulk was injured when he fought with Abomination, and it seemed that he lost a lot of blood, so Carl still had a chance to get Hulk's blood. However, he had to do it himself. Anyway, the elemental Hulk couldn't kill Carl, so getting some blood should be enough. Because Carl had let a shadow ninja lurk in Hulk's shadow before, he knew that Dr. Banner had returned to New York from the suburbs, and that the person with him should still be Betty, General Ross's daughter. Carl arrived in a restaurant on 121st Street in Harlem in advance, ready to wait for him there. From Carl's position, he could see the place where Banner injected the medicine, which was Mr. Blue's laboratory window. The Abomination jumped out from there later. Several black shadows ashed under Carl's feet and sneaked in that direction. Carl planned to let the black shadow ninja lurk in Mr. Blue's Stern's shadow and catch him directly after he mutated. Carl was eating the food on the table slowly, and then he could feel the dark shadow ninja in Dr. Banner's shadow getting closer and closer to him. With a smile on his lips, he looked up in the direction of Mr. Ian's laboratory, and soon the army arrived. Carl knew that Dr. Banner had been exposed, and that the Abomination would soon appear. Poor American people, they were suffering so much. After paying the bill, Carl left the restaurant, walked into an alley and disappeared. Chapter 55, Conquering Samuel in Mr. Blue's laboratory. After Banner lay on the experimental table, Samuel Stern, also known as Mr. Blue, stimulated Dr. Banner's temple with electric shocks. After that, Dr. Banner began to transform. The bone marrow in his body began to grow and the skin turned green. Just when Dr. Banner was about to control himself, Betty crawled in front of Banner, looked into his eyes and said, "Bruce, look at me, you can do it, I believe in you. Doctor, give me the injection quickly." Oh, good. After that, Samuel operated the computer for a while and found that it didn't work. He immediately walked to the other side and pressed a button. Then a can of purple liquid was injected into Banner's body, who was about to complete the transformation. After that, the gamma rays in his body began to decrease, and then slowly returned to its original appearance. Then the green skin on his body gradually disappeared, and 30 seconds later, he completely turned back into Bruce Banner. Oh God. You're okay, Bruce. Betty looked at Banner, who had recovered, and said in surprise while hugging him. Well, I think maybe it's not as good as you think. Maybe he has recovered, or maybe it has just been suppressed and not eradicated. I'm not sure. Samuel said to Banner and Betty, who were hugging each other. What? How could this be? Hasn't Bruce recovered? Betty asked Samuel a little excitedly. Okay. Betty, it's pretty good now. At least the worst has been suppressed, right? Banner hurriedly comforted Betty and put on his clothes. Then he, Betty and Samuel walked in the laboratory. After hearing that Samuel had made his blood sample, he expressed his strong opposition. They should even be destroyed immediately, because he deeply knows what consequences his blood will cause, and how crazy the military will be if they know it. Samuel was puzzled by Banner's statement. With these things, they can even sweep the Nobel Prize, and even develop many drugs to cure terminal diseases, and even become supermasters in the field of biology. Whoosh! Banner was shot with a tranquilizer gun from outside the glass, and then several soldiers rushed into the laboratory and took Banner and Betty away, leaving only a female officer to interrogate Samuel. A few minutes later, Bronski walked in from the door and knocked the female officer away with a punch. After being kicked by Hulk, Bronski became paralyzed all over. Ross was planning to give up on him, but because of his super genes, he miraculously recovered after 2 days and was not hurt at all. Ross was also very surprised, and after getting the news from Banner, he also called Bronski to join him. "She's too slow, isn't she? I also want to become as strong as Hulk. Can you do it?" Bronski grabbed Smear's collar, lifted him up, and spoke to him earnestly. "Are you talking about Hulk?" "No problem, of course. But I don't know what you have injected before, so there may be side effects, and some unknown situations may happen." "Okay. Okay, I'll give you the injection right now." Samuel looked at the gun in front of him and immediately agreed to let Bronski give him the injection. After all, he didn't want to die. After that, Bronski lay where Banner had been lying. Smueller put Banner's blood into the injection instrument and then injected it into Bronski. On the other side, Ross also found that Bronski had lost contact, and the last time he was seen, he went to the laboratory where Banner had been before. But he took a look at Banner and Betty on the plane, and then ordered the plane to return. As long as Banner was in his hands, Bronski was dispensable to him. He was not even afraid of the Black Palace's accountability. After all, he was a general with real power, and the Black Palace could not do anything to him. As Banner's blood entered Bronski's body, his body began to change, and eventually he became a shit yellow monster with a bald head. The spine behind him was abnormally prominent. Samuel panicked when he saw the scene, and said humbly to Bronski, "Wait a minute, I will soon be able to turn you back to your original state, just wait a moment." Boom. "No. I don't want to change back. I can feel that I am very strong now, stronger than ever before." The mutated Bronski raised his hand and knocked Samuel away. He even broke the wall in front of him and jumped out. Samuel was knocked away by Bronski and hit the machine and fainted, and Banner's blood was owing towards him. Then there was a wound below that was caused by the machine. As the blood dripped in, Samuel's head began to mutate. Soon Samuel woke up with a meaningful expression, and then his head stopped when it became as big as a basketball. He now felt very comfortable and his mind was very clear. Even his thinking speed increased a lot. Just as he was escaping with several Banner blood samples, many shadows appeared in the laboratory. They were all wearing ninja uniforms and looking at him with scarlet eyes. He immediately became alert and used his brain to think if there was any way to escape. "Yes, Mr. Smear has really evolved. How about working for me?" Carl suddenly appeared on a stool not far in front of Samuel, and the surrounding shadow ninjas knelt on one knee and saluted Carl when they saw Carl's appearance. Carl looked at Samuel with interest. With his current IQ, he should be able to improve the super gene of Stark Industries. "Who are you? Did you know that I can evolve?" Samuel said to Carl cautiously. He didn't expect that the other party would speak as if he had known that I could evolve. The reason why Carl didn't say mutation was mainly to make it sound better. "My name is Carl Augustin Jong. I'm a shareholder of Stark Industries, a good friend of Tony Stark, and also a person with superpowers. I want you to work for me, and I will take you to see a different world. Don't you like studying genes? I can give you more genetic research, even creatures outside the universe, and more powerful creatures. What do you think?" Carl looked at Samuel and said lightly, "Okay, I need a laboratory." Samuel agreed to Carl, because he was tempted by the idea of giving him more genes. Although his brain had evolved, he had no combat power, not to mention that the other party also said that there were even creatures in the universe, which made him even more yearning. After seeing the power of Hulk and the man injected with genes, he couldn't wait to explore the world of genes. Chapter 56 Hatred. The reason why Samuel was conquered by Carl so easily was actually that his title as a shareholder of Stark Industries played a big role, because research is the most expensive thing. How could he study genes without money? Not to mention that he is just a PhD and his savings are not enough to support his research. Even if he could get money from unknown sources, it would only be a drop in the bucket, not to mention that some experimental facilities and other things are not available to ordinary people. And what does Stark Industries represent? It represents the Green Franklin, which is simply a symbol of wealth. Ever since Tony Stark announced that he was Iron Man, the stock of Stark Industries has skyrocketed, and Carl's net worth has also increased a lot, even reaching the level of tens of billions. You must know that Carl only used 200 million US dollars as capital at the beginning. Of course. Tony and I have a biological laboratory where we are researching Stark Industries supergenes, similar to the ones Captain America injected during World War II. If you are interested, you can join us. I also have the genes of various mutants. Of course, you can study all of these, but I have only one condition. I need your loyalty, otherwise. Carl said to Samuel indifferently, and his tone became dangerous. Then his eyes ashed red, and a red laser shot out from Carl's eyes, shooting the stool next to Samuel in half. Of course, as long as you study the genes for me, I can make any gene serum for you. Samuel said respectfully to Carl. After his brain mutated, his thinking was abnormally fast. He immediately understood Carl's purpose and expressed his loyalty. Very good, these black shadow ninjas will enter your shadow, and if you betray me, they will pierce your heart with weapons. I will not call them back until I trust you. Carl looked at Samuel and nodded with satisfaction after seeing how tactful he was. Of course, boss, can you take me to the laboratory now? It would be even better if we could take all of Dr. Banner's serum away. Samuel said to Carl without any objection, and then proposed to go to the laboratory and take all of Dr. Banner's serum away. Okay, they will take you to the laboratory and also bring all the blood samples for you. Okay, you go RST. Carl naturally agreed. After all, if this thing is researched out, the Bennetts will be huge. Then two shadow ninjas appeared behind Samuel and took him into the shadow world to sneak into the laboratory where Yingson was. And the remaining few shadow ninjas took all the bags and test tubes containing Dr. Banner's blood in the laboratory into the shadow world and brought them to Samuel. Carl took out his mobile phone and called Yingson. He had to notify him somehow, and the call was connected after a while. Yingson, I have arranged for a PhD in biology to come here, and he has strong scientific research ability, but he has not yet gained my trust. You can let him join the research on supergenes. I have the means to monitor him. Carl said directly after answering Yingson's call. He did not exchange any pleasantries with Yingson. After all, he still had to get Hulk's blood later. Okay, Carl, I get it. I've seen him. He was brought here by your ninja. Oh shit, his head is so big. After hearing Carl's words, Yingson was not dissatisfied with Carl's sudden arrangement of someone to come in. It would be better if someone could help him. Although there are several doctors in the laboratory, their abilities are not outstanding. After Carl hung up the phone, he disappeared from the spot and came to the roof of the building on 121st Street, looking down at the crazy Brinsky below. No, it should be, hatred. Hulk, come out here. Ha 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 ha, I won't lose this time, boom. The abomination was smashing things in the street and lifted up the car next to it to smash the army attacking him. Ross did not bring many people this time, only a few jeeps and an armed helicopter. He had already left with Banner and Betty, leaving only a few jeeps and 2 teams of soldiers. When they saw the abomination, they thought it was the Hulk and immediately attacked him. You have to know that this is a downtown area, and there are people and shops around, so there is a lot of traffic. Boom. General, Hulk was spotted on 121st Street, heading north on Broadway. Requesting support. A soldier contacted Ross on the plane via the intercom, and Ross glanced at Banner and Betty. Isn't Hulk Banner? He is here now, so who is that Hulk over there? Soldier, transmit your image over. Ross said into the walkie-talkie. Yes. General. As the soldier finished speaking, the previous scene appeared on a display screen on the plane. A monster uglier than the Hulk was destroying the streets and attacking the army, and the soldier picked up a rocket launcher and read at the abomination. Boom. Although it hit the target, it did not cause any substantial damage and even attracted the attention of Abomination. He took a few steps and jumped onto the jeep. He then smashed the soldier holding the rocket launcher with his STS. The scene was interrupted by Abomination's move. The soldier and the jeep were undoubtedly eaten by Abomination. Abomination even lifted up the entire jeep and threw it into a store on the street next to it, causing many casualties. Ross, Banner, and Betty on the plane guessed what happened after seeing the video interruption. They looked at each other in silence, and then Banner spoke, "Let me go back. I am the only one who can deal with him now. Otherwise, he will keep causing trouble and things will only get worse." No. Bruce, you are not sure whether you can transform or not. If you can't transform, you are going to die. Betty said excitedly while grabbing Banner's arm, because Banner had injected the drug before and successfully forced Hulk back. No, Betty, I have no choice, because he was made with my blood, so only Hulk can deal with him. Banner let go of Betty's hand and said to him affectionately. How content are you? Ross said to Banner after a moment of silence. Chapter 57 The appearance of female Spider-Man. At least it won't make things worse. Banner looked at Ross solemnly and said. Return. Ross was silent for a while and decided to return. After all, this was a downtown area. If there were a large number of casualties, he estimated that even the general would have to lose a star. If the problem was not resolved, the consequences would be beyond his ability to bear. Although he did not care about the voices of some people, he would still be troubled if the Black Palace and the Chief Justice were held accountable. If he was promoted in name only and demoted in reality, that would not be fun. What other position can be as comfortable as a general with real power? He controls a large number of troops, and normally even the president has to give him some face. If he makes an irreversible serious mistake, he will be stripped of his official hat, even though he is a general. The other side. Carl stood on the rooftop and watched the abomination below go crazy indifferently, and fell into deep thought. Bronsky had been injected with an incomplete super gene from Stark Industries before, and that super gene was researched through Captain America's super gene. Perhaps good people would become better after the injection, and evil people would become better after the injection, just like Captain America and the leader of Hydra. However, this effect should not be as serious as Captain America's. Instead, it is subtly changing Bronsky's mind. In addition, he was defeated by Hulk twice, and even paralyzed the second time, which made him more eager for power and became psychologically twisted. After knowing that injecting Hulk's blood would gain more powerful power, he couldn't wait. Because the old man who had drunk Banner's blood before became as powerful as a super soldier, but he had mutated and his eyes were full of anger. Bronsky naturally saw this, so he threatened Samuel to inject him with Banner's blood, and even ignored Ross's orders and threw away the headset. At this moment, Abomination was suddenly knocked away. Carl couldn't help but look in the opposite direction of Abomination. When he saw clearly, his eyes were shocked and a little unbelievable. It turned out to be a woman wearing a black and white tights and a hood, and there was even a spider pattern on her clothes. Isn't this Spider-Man? Carl felt that his brain was not enough at this moment. The female Spider-Man shouldn't have appeared when Peter was in high school. Later, Peter turned into a lizard man and even said, with great power comes great responsibility. According to Carl's observation, the Spider-Man in this world should be Peter, and now he is just a little kid. But where did this female Spider-Man come from? Carl thought for a while. Could it be that the Osborn group was still researching super spiders? Then she was bitten by a spider, and then she learned from Tony to become a superhero? After all, Tony has almost gone crazy on the internet, and his fans are everywhere. While Carl was thinking, the female Spider-Man swung her spider silk and kicked the Abomination away again. The angry Abomination picked up a car and threw it at her. Spider-Man was originally ready to dodge, but after seeing the people in the car, she had to GHT back. She used spider silk to connect the surrounding buildings to form a spider web. The car fell directly on it, and then she immediately rescued the people inside. Ha 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 ha, little bug, see how many people you can save. Abomination laughed out loud when he saw that the other party actually saved people, and then threw all the surrounding cars towards Spider-Man, and Spider-Man could only keep reducing the impact force of the vehicles. She also used spider silk to control the vehicle within the spider web and quickly rescued the people inside. Even though she had a strong reaction, X-able movement, and spider silk, she would still make mistakes. Once she made a mistake, the people in the car would die or be seriously injured. The strength used by Abomination to throw out the vehicle was not weak. After all, he had suppressed Hulk for a while in the early stage of the timeline. Boom. Boom. Spider-Man knew that this was not a solution as it would cause more people to get hurt, so he shot spider silk at the tall buildings and swung towards the direction of Abomination. Only by close combat with Abomination could he ensure that he would not hurt the people. Carl narrowed his eyes at the female Spider-Man below. He was not sure if the other party was Gwen Stacy, but there was a great possibility. After all, the gore of this female Spider-Man was not as plump as that of an adult. But the scale is not small, and you can vaguely see that she is still a little green. Regardless of whether she is or not, Carl decided to go and out later. Spider-Man and Abomination were getting earthly below. Previously, Spider-Man was able to attack Abomination with his X-able body, but it didn't last long. Abomination seized the opportunity and punched Spider-Man. Boom. Spider-Man was immediately knocked away and crashed into the wall of a nearby street shop, and cracks appeared on the wall. You must know that the predecessor of Abomination was Brnsky, and before he became Abomination, he was an ace in the army. Even if Spider-Man has spider sense, he may not be his opponent. After all, Ding is not useful just by sense. Hee, little bug, why can't you stand up? Get up and continue. If you can't get up, then you can die. She said to Spider-Man, who was covering his stomach with her hands with a hateful laugh, and walked slowly towards her. At the end of her words, she jumped up, clenched her STS, and bent backwards. As her body landed on the ground, the impact force of her STS and her own strength combined to smash towards Spider-Man. Boom. As the smoke cleared, Spider-Man was not hit. After all, she had spider sense, and even though her physicalness had improved a lot because of the spider bite, she could not withstand the full strength punch of Abomination. She felt a burning pain in her abdomen at this moment, and even her internal organs were injured, and she was probably bleeding. Whoosh. She took advantage of Abomination's inattention and attacked him from behind again, but this time she failed. Instead, Abomination grabbed her foot. Abomination couldn't help but open his terrifying mouth and reveal a smile. Then he threw Spider-Man to the ground and immediately stomped on him hard, but Spider-Man dodged it exably. Even so, she still felt that her injuries were aggravated. Even the blow from Abomination was not easy to withstand. She already knew that she couldn't GHT anymore, otherwise she would probably die here, and then she limped out a spider silk, ready to leave, but how could Abomination let her go, and picked up a piece of car debris beside her and threw it at the spider silk. And it hit her directly, causing Spider-Man, who had just swung, to fall directly to the ground. If she hadn't been injured, she might not have fallen, but her stomach and abdomen were extremely painful at this moment, even burning. Chapter 58 Hulk vs Abomination. The Hatred originally planned to pursue the victory, and anyone who came out to obstruct him must die. Boom. But Abomination heard a noise, and it was very close to him. He turned his head and saw a big pit, and a big green hand stretched out from it. Slowly crawling out of the pit, he immediately understood who it was: Hulk. Hulk. Ha 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 ha, you nearly showed up in pairs. Hulk. Abomination shouted excitedly at Hulk, and ran towards Hulk's direction. When Hulk saw the other party running towards him, he also ran towards the other party without showing any weakness. Boom. The two huge monsters collided with each other, but Hulk was knocked away directly. It should be because of the drug injected by Banner before, which caused Hulk's strength to weaken. After seeing that he was slightly better, Abomination became more excited and began to attack Hulk frantically, punching him one by one. But Hulk is no pushover. Even though his strength was weakened a lot, he still kicked Abomination away. He picked up the car next to him and threw it at Abomination, but Abomination dodged it easily. Then the two of them started a real manly GHT with punches between them. Roar. Hulk, who was continuously beaten, now couldn't help but roar at Abomination. Then his strength increased. And he attacked Abomination again and knocked it directly into the ground. Abomination was not so easy to die, and became excited again after seeing Hulk become stronger. Boom. Boom. The two men collided with each other, evenly matched. Because Hulk's strength was weakened before, he just recovered to his original strength this time. Carl on the other side didn't care about the battle between Hulk and Abomination. After all, the GHT between the two of them would not finish so quickly, so there was no rush. He used telekinesis to make himself out in the air, and flew to the place where Spider-Man just left. He wanted to see who the Spider-Man was. After passing a dark alley, Carl found the Spider-Man. She was lying on the ground, powerless, and there was a pool of blood on the ground. Carl couldn't help shaking his head. He didn't even dare to go up and take a punch from the Abomination, but she endured the Abomination's attack twice. No matter how powerful the spider serum is, it can't be resisted. After all, it is a monster created by Banner's blood. Carl fell in front of Spider-Man and found that she had no reaction. She was probably fainted. Ordinary people would be turned into meat paste if they were attacked once. Even with the spider serum, she endured it twice. It would be strange if she didn't faint. Carl walked up to the pneumatic drill and took off her mask, revealing a beautiful and youthful face. As Carl had guessed, it was Gwen Stacy. Carl shook his head and said, "Just study hard. Why try to be a superhero without considering your parents? What if they do something to your parents?" Carl carried her back to his original position. He didn't plan to use the senzu beans on her, they were not related at all. How could Carl use such a precious thing on her? You know, he only had 3 beans now, this thing could save lives. Carl was going to give Tony one later, but forget about Gwen, he wasn't familiar with her, at most he would just take her to the hospital or throw her back to her home. After Carl returned to his previous position, Hulk and Abomination had already fought to the other side. Seeing that Hulk was about to be defeated, Ross ordered the helicopter to attack Abomination. Finally, Abomination jumped from a tall building and grabbed the support pole of the helicopter, while Hulk also grabbed Abomination from behind. Then they all fell to the ground, along with the helicopter. Seeing that no one was interfering, Abomination immediately continued to attack Hulk, while the helicopter on the other side was leaking oil and Betty and Ross inside were struggling to climb out of the helicopter. But Abomination obviously wouldn't let them have their way. After kicking Hulk away, he stepped on the helicopter, not caring at all that one of the people inside was once his superior. Roar! Hulk roared at Abomination, and immediately grabbed the large iron chain next to him and threw it at Abomination, but the effect was not satisfactory. Abomination grabbed the other end and jumped in front of Hulk to strangle him. A green light ashed in Hulk's eyes again. Carl knew that Hulk was going to become stronger again, and immediately asked Black Shadow Ninja to collect blood from his wound. While the Abomination was trapping Hulk, the Black Shadow Ninja collected Hulk's blood in a short while, ling a whole test tube. As soon as the Black Shadow Ninja finished collecting the blood, the Hulk broke free from the chains. After he knocked the Abomination away, he saw that the helicopter was surrounded by AIMs. He took a step towards the helicopter and quickly clasped his hands together. Boom! The generated wind blew away all the surrounding AIMs. Carl watched the scene from a distance and couldn't help twitching his mouth. This was too unscientific. After all, it was fuel. Hulk turned his head and saw that Abomination stood up. He picked up the chain and rushed towards Abomination, and then strangled his neck tightly. 5 minutes later, Abomination's struggles became weaker and weaker, and he almost had no strength to struggle anymore. Hulk then let go of Abomination, grabbed the large steel bar next to him, and thrust it hard into Abomination's chest. Prick! A large steel bar pierced through the heart of Abomination, and yellow blood gushed out continuously. After struggling with all his might for a few times, he collapsed to the ground. Then Hulk looked around and saw that there were people everywhere. Carl suddenly felt that they seemed to be courting death. If Hulk went crazy, wouldn't everyone be left alive? Hulk glanced at Betty and Ross who had climbed out of the helicopter, and then left with a few big jumps, but Carl did not take the Black Ninja back. It remained in the shadows of Hulk and Banner, but even without the Black Ninja, he knew where Banner would go. In the movies I watched in my previous life, after he escaped from New York, he seemed to appear in Bella Coola, British Columbia. Seeing that all the protagonists had left, Carl picked up the unconscious female Spider-Man next to him, Gwen Stacy, entered the shadow world and disappeared, but he did not send her back to her own home or the hospital, but took her to his own manor. Perhaps it was the LSP attribute that was activated. Gwen looked different in a Spider-Man uniform. Oh shit, this is the person who just fought with that yellow monster. How did she end up in your hands? Chapter 59 Serum Injection. Oh yes, she was injured by that monster and fainted in an alley. I brought her back. Raven, can you treat her? Carl shrugged and said to Aunt May and Wanda. The reason why he asked Raven to help her treat her was because Raven had done many jobs, and doctor was one of them. Okay, put her in the medical room quickly. After hearing what Carl said, Raven asked Carl to carry her to the medical room. How could a manor worth billions of dollars not have a medical room that could even perform a small operation? Wow, she is so young, still a child. After Aunt May followed Carl and Raven into the medical room, she exclaimed when she saw Carl take off her mask. No one would have thought that the person who had just fought with the yellow monster was actually a child, and even looked underage. Okay, Carl, you go out. Rst May, come and help me. I need an assistant. Raven operated the medical equipment to monitor Gwen, who was lying on the operating table. Carl's previous knowledge was all guesses, but Raven needed to know where she was injured before she could start treatment. Oh, okay. Aunt May agreed to Raven immediately. After Carl left, she talked to Raven for a long time and was shocked by what she said. They both had high emotional intelligence, so they could naturally get along better. And at the moment, it was about saving people, so she did not hesitate. After walking out of the medical room, he thought that he still had to make serum. So he immediately disappeared from the spot, and the next moment he came to his and Tony's biological laboratory. Carl RST greeted Ensign and Samuel, who had a big head not far away. Carl came to the centrifuge and put Hulk's blood on it according to Ensign's instructions. After the high-speed rotation of the centrifuge, the serum in the blood was separated. And unlike ordinary people, this serum is green. Carl disappeared directly after getting the serum. He didn't even say hello to Yingson, who just shrugged and continued with what he was doing. Now he just had to concentrate on studying genes. His hometown was getting better and better with the funding from Tony and Carl. After leaving the laboratory, he appeared in an alley and entered the shadow world. After summoning several shadow ninjas to protect himself, Carl took out the purification rune for signing in and pressed it on the test tube of serum. The rune was then automatically embedded in the test tube and disappeared after a while. The color of the serum also changed, from the original dark green to light green, after Carl used the system to check the serum in his hand. Gamma serum, serum extracted from the blood of gamma-ray mutant creatures. After being pourried by the purification rune, the side effects inside it disappear. After injection, it can greatly enhance the physicalness and will not cause physical mutations. Carl couldn't help but smile after seeing the system's annotation. He took out a syringe from the system space and prepared to inject himself. Although he didn't have the Hulk's ability to become stronger the angrier he got, he still had the physique of the normal Hulk. He got the syringe in the laboratory, so they were his own things anyway. Prick. He inserted the syringe into his arm and began to inject serum into it. As the syringe was pressed, the serum slowly entered Carl's body. Carl could feel his internal organs burning, with a very piercing pain. Every piece of skin and muscle was aching, and his meridians seemed to be impacted by something. His heart beat faster and even more powerfully. Carl gritted his teeth and persisted in the strengthening brought by the serum in the dark world. His body was already drenched with sweat and he felt like he was going to faint. It was so painful that even his bone marrow hurt. This process lasted for a full 10 minutes. Carl nearly stopped when he was about to give up. Although he still felt a little burning sensation on his body, it was nothing compared to what he felt just now. He clenched his STS, and after feeling his own strength, an excited expression appeared on his face. Afterwards, he found a layer of black stains on the surface of his body, which smelled particularly bad. Carl then returned from the shadow world to the bathroom in his manner and immediately washed his body. However, due to the significant increase in his strength, he broke a lot of things and even broke his handle. After carefully putting on his clothes, Carl disappeared in the manor again. The clothes were too fragile and they broke when he pulled them lightly. He put them on VE times before he was done. Carl appeared at the foot of a mountain, surrounded by stones of different sizes. Then he started lifting stones here to train his control over his strength. Although he had a gym at home, how could it be suitable for Carl who now had the normal strength of the Hulk? Now each stone he lifted would weigh several tons. He practiced at the foot of the mountain for nearly 3 hours before he could barely control his strength. Because of the improvement in his physique, he can now summon a full 10,000 shadow ninjas, and even 2 shadow armies can summon 10,000 at the same time. The ability of the ice fruit has also increased a lot, and his control over the power of freezing has become more handy. Moreover, due to the all-round enhancement, his telekinesis has reached a terrifying level. It was effortless for him to control his telekinesis to destroy a boulder weighing several tons. Carl felt that if he flew at full speed now, he should be able to reach 1 to 2 Mach. Without actually calculating, as it was getting dark, Carl returned to his manor, but the manor was in a mess. Carl narrowed his eyes slightly. The next moment, he was surrounded by shadow ninjas. Carl walked into the place where the speedster had been parked before, and found that it was not there. Even Aunt May, Raven, and the others were not there. Carl was furious. Shadow ninjas kept appearing around him. The whole manor was LED with shadow ninjas. There were 20,000 shadow ninjas. From a distance, it looked like a dark mass. Carl suddenly thought of something and took out his cell phone, just in time to see the message that Jisoo sent him, as well as the calls from Aunt May and Raven. In order to avoid crushing his phone, he put it in the system space and was unaware of the messages and calls. Chapter 60 Red House Boss, there was an attack at home. I have helped May, Raven, Wanda and the others evacuate. When I couldn't contact the boss, I called Mr. Tony Stark for support. Now we are at Mr. Tony Stark's house. After reading the message Zoom sent him, he breathed a sigh of relief. Then all the shadow ninjas disappeared, and he himself disappeared from the spot. The next moment, he appeared in Tony's mansion and found Aunt May, Raven, Wanda, Pilato, Peter, and the injured Gwen were all there, and Pepper was chatting with Aunt May. Hey man, where have you been? Your house was attacked. Oh shit, you didn't tell me you had a transformer. Do you know how surprised I am? Tony said after seeing Carl suddenly appear, and began to speak to Carl in an unbelievable tone. Yes, there are Transformers movies in this world, and they are the kind that are released worldwide, so Tony was so surprised. After all, Transformers are real Autobots, and they contain a lot of technology. You didn't ask either. Okay, we'll discuss this question later. Who attacked my house? Have you found out? Carl interrupted Tony's excitement and said to him with a gloomy face. On the other side, Raven, who was chatting with Pepper and taking care of Gwen, also looked up at this place. I think we've found them. They're an organization called the Red House that specializes in training spies, and they're female spies. But I can't even ND any trace of them with the help of Stark Industries Satellite and Jarvis. Tony called up the information from his investigation and explained it to Carl. Carl narrowed his eyes as he looked at the information in front of him. The Red House? The Black Widow of the previous generation had come to his manor and wanted to apply for the position of butler but was not selected? Could it be that they wanted to use the people around them to threaten him? Okay, I get it. Thank you Tony, I know where they are. Since you dare to attack the people around me, you must be prepared to die. Carl turned around and said to Tony, but the murderous intent revealed at the end of his tone made Tony shudder. Do you need help, man? Tony asked Carl. After all, the other party was a spy organization, so it must be difficult to deal with. Just help me take care of them, I'll handle it soon. Carl disappeared after saying this to Tony. Tony asked Jarvis to start the defense facilities in the villa. Protective shields were constantly lowered around, and various weapons appeared in some walls of the villa. Are you kidding? As the world's #1 arms dealer, how could Tony's home be an ordinary villa? Not to mention a nuclear warhead under the villa, there must be a few missiles and machine guns. Even if he doesn't sell arms now, he won't get rid of these things, even though he is Iron Man. Carl knew that the base of the Red House was in the sky above Belarus. It was an aerial fortress, and it could also be hidden. Carl only knew that he was injured in that city, but he didn't know where exactly. However, with the help of the Black Shadow Ninja, ending it was very easy. Carl was speeding in the shadow world, and soon he arrived above a city in Belarus according to the direction. He sensed through the shadows that there was a place in the sky where the Shadow Ninja could go out. The Shadow Ninja could only appear from a dark place, so how could there be a dark place in the sky? That should be the headquarters of the Red House. At this moment in the Red House base, the Master of Imitation looked at the people below and roared angrily, because they did not bring back the people around Carl, so they could not control Carl. Then the Master of Imitation said to a woman next to him, "Get rid of it." Afterwards, the woman next to them brought a few people to kill the women just now. She was Yelena, the current Black Widow of the Red House, and also Natasha's sister. She ignored the pleas and wails of those women and killed them all directly. Compared to staying here, death might be a relief for them. The Red House can be said to be a devil's cave. They will let a group of girls live together, make them friends, and then send them to the snow to survive. They only give them survival supplies for one person, which means that only one person can survive. Moreover, they will teach them various skills, etiquette, culture, dance, and knowledge needed for espionage, and will remove their uteruses so that they will never be able to have children. And they have to constantly complete espionage and assassination missions. Once they fail, death awaits them. They will completely destroy their 3 views and turn them into perfect killing machines, until only one person graduates from each class of the Red House and becomes the new Black Widow. Bang bang bang. When Yelena returned to the room, countless black-clad ninjas suddenly appeared around her and surrounded them, even the imitation master, while Carl walked out of the darkness clapping his hands. I didn't expect that I could watch such a big show. I can only say that it is worthy of being the Red House. Carl slowly walked towards the imitation master. As for the imitation master, he was just a human who could imitate the opponent's acting skills and various abilities, but he could not imitate superpowers and so on. You are Carl. I didn't expect you to ND your way here. The imitation master said to Carl in a deep voice. You know. The Red House is in the air. He didn't expect Carl to be able to ND it in such a short time. Haha, are you scared? You should have this awareness when you attack the people around me. Kill. Carl said with a playful look at the imitation master, and directly ordered an attack. At the same time, Yelena also understood that only by capturing Carl could those black-clothed ninjas be deterred from taking action. Then she immediately attacked Carl, but her attack was as slow as a snail for Carl, and she swung her right hand in the direction of Yelena. Boom! Yelena was directly knocked ying by Carl, and she was about to kick Carl, so Carl's attack landed on her calf. When she was knocked ying by Carl, her entire right leg was twisted, and she even collapsed on the ground unable to move. Carl now has the normal strength of Hulk, and a casual blow has a power of tons. Even if she has been injected with special genes, she can't withstand it. The imitation master who was acting with the shadow ninja narrowed his pupils when he saw this scene. He knew that Carl was powerful, but he didn't expect that he could knock their Black Widow to the ground and make her unable to move. He also heard screams coming from outside, and guessed that he was not the only one attacked. That was natural. Carl had dispatched 10,000 Black Shadow ninjas to massacre the entire Red House. He wanted to destroy the entire Red House in one fell swoop. This was the price of provoking him. Watching the Master of Imitation ding back and forth with the Black Shadow ninjas, Carl activated his telekinesis and controlled the Master of Imitation to the point where he could not move. He simply crushed his head with his telekinesis. As for who his real identity was, Carl didn't care at all. Chapter 61, Red House destroyed. After killing the Master of Mimicry, Carl sent a large number of Black Shadow ninjas to search for the real leader of the Red House, Dekov. The killing in the entire Red House base did not last long. After VE minutes, almost all the spies and personnel in the Red House were dead, leaving only one place where ding sounds could be heard. After Carl came to that place through the Shadow World, he found that dozens of Shadow ninjas could not defeat the opponent and were even suppressed. Carl also understood who the opponent was. It was the real leader of the Red House, Dekov. Carl looked at him with interest and sent 10 Shadow ninjas to rush towards him again. Since 10 are not enough, how about 20? With the addition of the 10 Shadow ninjas, the situation turned around instantly. Wounds began to appear on Dekov's body, but they recovered after a while. Seeing this, Kaner narrowed his eyes slightly. He must have been injected with some special genes, thinking that Natasha was still so young. Several shadows slipped out from under Carl's feet and sneaked outside. He planned to send the Shadow Ninja to look for genetic drugs, or genetic research data and the formula of the Innite formula. No, the Innite formula injected by Nick Fury actually belonged to Hydra at the beginning. As for why Nick Fury had it, it was naturally because after the end of World War II, SHIELD absorbed a lot of Hydra scientists, and after Nick took the position of director, he naturally knew the Innite formula and immediately began to inject himself, but he needed regular injections, not just one shot to be the solution. But it can slow down the aging of body functions, which is equivalent to prolonging life. Even if it needs continuous injection, it will drive countless people crazy. There are countless rich and dying tycoons in the world, especially the country with a piece of cloth on its head, the richest country in the world. Carl watched Dekov continue to be beaten, and then he was quickly subdued by the Black Shadow Ninja. Carl walked up to him and crushed his head with telekinesis. Before that, Dekov opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something. Of course Carl knew it, because it was Hydra that instructed him to do this. Even the Red House had a close relationship with Hydra. Carl had known it for a long time. Carl now deeply understands a sentence from the forum in his previous life: Hydra has the NAL say on whether Marvel is in chaos or not. They are everywhere, and Carl also knows that Hydra wants to attack him, but he doesn't know which lineage of Hydra it is. Otherwise, is he going to kill all the Hydra? Stop joking. Not to mention that some Hydra members are now high-ranking government officials, not to mention that Hydra members are everywhere. If he kills all of them, not to mention being wanted by the government, if he is killed by Hydra members, wouldn't that be stealing Captain America's job? The old man has to move after he comes out of the ice. Although Carl is not afraid of the American government's wanted list, and he can be safe even if a nuclear bomb is dropped, he will probably receive a lot of disturbances. Will he kill the president? Then America will have to GHT him to the death? Even Nick Fury will do his best to deal with him, and if the government offers conditions to the mutants, Old Juan will not be able to hold back, and Charles will take action again. It's not that he is afraid, but there is no need to. After all, he still has to live with Aunt May and the others. It would be better to wait for that lineage of Hydra to jump out by themselves, and then Carl will catch them all in one fell swoop. If there is a RST time, there will be a second time. He is not in a hurry. This time the Red House is just a warning. After Carl arrived at the warehouse of the Red House base, he found many special materials and experimental facilities, even FTY kilograms of vibranium. Carl naturally accepted them all with a smile. There was also a whole safe full of US dollars. Carl asked the Black Shadow Ninja to sort them all out, and Carl then put them all into the system space. After some searching, Carl found the genetic drug that Black Widow injected. There were only 3 left, but the research data was also in the box. Carl couldn't help but smile. Then Carl found the information about the Inite formula in Dekhov's room and put them all into the system space. Carl took out the time bomb from the Shadow World and asked the Shadow Ninja to place the time bombs in various places in the Red House base. Carl came to the control room, and after some operations, the Red House base began to move NEU to the suburbs outside the city. Carl then asked the Black Shadow Ninja to take Yelena and disappear in the base. 10 minutes after they disappeared, an explosion occurred in the Red House base, and the explosion swept the entire base. After that, it fell to the ground, but it was just some wreckage of the base, and people in the city naturally noticed the movement. After Carl disappeared from the Red House base, he appeared in Tony's mansion. The reason why he brought Yelena back was because she was a person who had been injected with genes, and her acting skills were pretty good. She could serve as the security force in the manor. As for how to make her surrender, Carl has plenty of ways to torture her, and Carl will arrange for the Black Shadow Ninja to enter her shadow. Once there is something wrong with her, the Black Shadow Ninja will take her down directly. It is so safe. What's more, she is just protecting the safety of the manor. It is much better than being the Black Widow in the Red House. At least she doesn't have to kill and carry out missions every day. Hey Carl, there was an explosion in the sky over Belarus, and something is falling to the ground. Was it you who did it? Tony asked him after seeing Carl appear in the living room. After all, Carl had not been there for long, probably 2 hours at most.